Chapter 101. With the two old men separated, the street fight ended with Mr. Weasley victorious. No one pays attention to what losers think, not even Levin. He knew very well that in the original novel, it was Lucius Malfoy who stuffed Voldemort's Horcrux diary into Ginny's stack of books. Maybe he didn't know it was a Horcrux, but it was he who indirectly caused this year's basilisk incident. But Levin had no intention of interfering in this matter, at least until he found a way to deal with the Horcruxes. Who knows what dark magic Voldemort might be hiding in there? Of course, if he learned the Great Disintegration technique now, then he designated that the diary should be taken care of for a while. But Lockhart is quite concerned about this dispute. He even asked reporters, "Can you include the fight in the report? Let's say that Arthur Weasley and Lucius Malfoy fought over buying my book." Later, Levin also separated from the Weasley family. He made an appointment with Ronald and others to carry out book copying plans at his house every day. Hermione and Siri also separated from him and went shopping separately. Levin went to the magical creatures store and asked the clerk, Miss Hayden, about the tail hair of the nine-tailed fox 550. At Christmas, he spent 50 galleons to ask the other party for information about various legendary magical creatures, especially the nine-tailed fox. This time, Miss Hayden brought bad news and good news. The bad news is that the poachers in the east were so bad that they mistook the guanhu for a nine-tailed fox. Naturally, they found nothing. The good news is that a wizard in South America discovered the feathers of the legendary feathered serpent in the ruins of a Mayan wizard. Now the price has reached over 1,000 galleons. So what else can Levin say? Of course I buy it. That's the feathered serpent. This magical creature has divinity and high intelligence. It can completely replace the tail hair of the nine-tailed fox as the main ingredient of the Eternal Fox's cunning elixir. To be on the safe side, Levin simply left 2,000 galleons and told her, if it wasn't enough, just write to him directly. Considering the poor logistics speed in the wizarding world, if all goes well, it is expected that Levin will receive the goods 1 month later. Then after the semester starts, he can perform the second, wilderness ritual. The magical creature's shop is full of harvests, but Levin came up empty-handed at Slugjig's pharmacy. It is said that because a tornado hit the only ream cattle sanctuary in the United States, there was no production of ream cattle blood in the entire America this year. The previous reservation has naturally come to nothing, and the main ingredient of Eternal Bull Power Elixir has disappeared. However, Levin now does not plan to use ream cow blood as the main ingredient. Otherwise, would it be difficult for him to transform into a ream cow in the wilderness? That's too inferior. Levin decided that if he wanted to change, he would become the fiercest. Among magical creatures, there is undoubtedly only one creature that is most famous for its power, and that is the dragon. Compared with the more powerful fire dragons, the related breeding industry is more developed in the wizarding world. If you want to transform into a fire dragon, the material you need is naturally dragon blood. This thing is relatively cheap, and you can get a potion in just a few dozen galleons. But Levin didn't buy dragon's blood. He ordered Dragonheart like Slugjig's pharmacy, and not 1 or 2, but 1 or several. In fact, Levin ordered 1 heart from each of the dozen or so species of fire dragons that have been identified today. On average, each Dragonheart cost him 1,000 galleons. The reason why he needs so many Dragonhearts is because Levin is not going to simply transform into a fire dragon. He tried to trace the origin of the fire dragon's blood in reverse and transform into a real dragon. A real giant dragon has 4 legs and 2 wings on its back. Not only is it extremely powerful, it also possesses a high degree of intelligence and unique dragon language magic. It is a creature that stands at the top of the species. The fire dragons in the Harry Potter world are just unintelligent beasts with wings connected to their forelimbs, just like bats. They are essentially flying dragons. But even flying dragons and fire dragons have the blood of giant dragons. It's just that different types of sub-dragon species only inherit part of the dragon's bloodline. Due to insufficient blood concentration, he lost the greatness and wisdom of the dragon and became a beast. Levin's move is precisely to collect all the different dragon bloodlines in the entire Harry Potter world, eliminate the parts that are not dragons, and then combine the remaining parts to restore the gene pool of real dragons as much as possible, so as to obtain as close as possible dragon's transformation. For Slugjig's pharmacy, this is undoubtedly a big order and a big project. 15 or 6 dragon hearts need to come from different types, which cannot be done in a short time. Therefore, Levin left a deposit of 8,000 galleons and entered a new round of waiting. After shopping, the 3 of them reunited and returned to the tower. Early the next morning, Ronald, Harry, and the Weasley twins eagerly visited the tower. Harry was already aware of their copying plan, and he was unhappy with Lockhart being forced to be interviewed, so he happily brought his complete set of autographs. It's just that there is a problem with copy 6. Scribe, even the simplest circle spell is not that easy to learn. Ronald gave up after trying it for a while, and Harry also learned the hard way. On the contrary, the Weasley twins learned very well. Levin, I have a proposal. After successfully copying a copy of Walking with Trolls using scribe technique, George said with great interest, I believe that throughout Hogwarts, we are not the only ones who are troubled by Lockhart. And we have the ability to solve this problem. We can use owls to contact those young wizards who have not bought Lockhart's books and provide them with copy books at a lower price. Fred continued. The price of a copy can be 1/3, or even 1/4, of the original book. I have just calculated that, even so, after deducting the cost, each book will make 12 to 14 cents. George added. If you allow me, this business can be done. Fred suggested. You invented scribe, so you use the magic authorization as your capital, and you can teach us all the other work. We will split the income from each book 50 to 50 with you. George said. His plan. After hearing this suggestion, Levin just nodded after thinking for a moment. Sounds good, I'll allow it. He himself is not short of money, but he doesn't mind a little more income. After all, relying solely on the Philosopher's Stone to make money is too blatant, and it might one day cause inflation. Great. George and Fred high-fived each other happily. After hearing about this, even Hermione and Harry became interested. I can also copy. Miss Granger raised her hand. Can I join in? And me. Harry also took the initiative. I will definitely learn this spell in the next 2 days. Even Ronald couldn't help but rekindle his desire to learn magic. No way, this business sounds too feasible and he is too short of pocket money. The twins discussed for a while and came to a decision. There is a profit of 12 to 14 sickles for each book copied, half of which belongs to Levin, and the rest is almost 6 to 7 sickles. This half of the profit is divided into 2 parts. Part of this was the scribe's salary, which was 4 or 5 sickles depending on the length of the book, which Hermione and Harry were able to earn. The other part is 2 sico as service charge for both of them. In addition to copying books, the two of them also have to do product promotion, contact customers, purchase ink and paper, etc. This is the reward for this part of the work. Everyone is very satisfied with this distribution method. So that day, the twins borrowed the owls of everyone present and sent out advertisements to everyone they knew, inviting them to buy discounted copies of the complete works of Lockhart. Even Levin's Hermer and Harry's Hedwig had to run errands for them. For several days, owls above the tower came and went in an endless stream. Facts have proved that there are indeed a large number of young wizards who are very dissatisfied with Lockhart coming to Hogwarts to sell books, and are happy to buy pirated books at lower prices. So on the first day alone, they received orders for 5 sets of books. This small book copying workshop, based on Levin's tower, is in full swing. And the 5 sets of books are just the beginning. Every day that followed, the orders increased so much that George and Fred had to frequently go to the paper shop to buy copying paper. This made Lisa, the muggle girl in the paper shop, think for a while that the brothers liked her. Seeing the enthusiasm of his friends, Levin also helped out and took the initiative to review and correct errors. After all, people who cast magic are bound to make mistakes. It is normal for copyists to copy something wrong. Levin was responsible for using Scholar's Touch on every copied book to check if there were any errors. Once the book is qualified, he will put his stamp on it. When choosing his magic mark, Levin accidentally adopted the symbol of intellect. Chapter 102. Time passed by in a hurry, and in the last week of summer vacation, the small workshop completed the last business, completely ending the book copying career. Although this period of time was not easy for everyone except Levin, but everyone is happy to be able to earn a galleons on their own. Now, it's time for the exciting penny split. Levin's profit was of course the highest, totaling over 300 galleons. Of course, compared with the cost of purchasing potion materials, this amount of money is only a fraction. But for the Weasley family, it was equivalent to 2 or 3 months of Arthur's salary. But Levin can make this money without having to do anything. This is enough to illustrate the value of knowledge. As the initiators of the entire business and the implementers of most of the behind-the-scenes work, the Weasley twins are the hardest working and most rewarding. The two of them each received more than 80 galleons. Of course, we also have to deduct publicity and logistics costs. To put it simply, it is a letter and a rum king to reward the owls. Actual income is slightly lower, but this is far more than their pocket money in the past year. The remaining 3, Hermione, Harry and Ronald, are just scribes, earning a hard-earned salary. Hermione has the best mastery of copying, and can copy books quickly and well. Naturally, she earns the most, a full 60 galleons. To this end, she copied more than 170 books. Harry earned 40 galleons. For pocket money, Ronald, who was still a little tired of learning, learned the art of copying. He caught the opportunity and made a small profit of more than 20 galleons. After dividing the money, of course everyone went back to their respective homes to find their respective mothers. Improve your life with the money you earn. It was a pleasure working with you, Levin. Before leaving, George said to Levin. Next time we have similar business, we will come back to you. Fred also announced loudly. Although Levin only provided the license for spells and made half of their hard-earned money, but the twins knew very well that without the scribal technology that greatly reduced the cost of copying books, this business would have been impossible to start. Today's wizarding society is actually a stock society. There has been no fundamental progress in productivity, so everyone is doing existing business and only involving in existing fields. Newcomers who want to enter these fields will probably not be able to compete with the veterans who have been iterating for dozens or hundreds of years. If you want to get rich, the only way is to innovate. Create new technologies and create new demands, or develop blue ocean industries yourself, or directly reduce the dimensionality of vested interests in red ocean industries. This is how you can start a successful business. When it comes to new technologies, we naturally have to rely on talented players like Levin who can create new magic at will. What's more, Levin is not just good at technology. In the process of running this business, George and Fred, who were just starting out, naturally made many mistakes. Things like miskeeping accounts, tight delivery schedules, and buying too much or too little raw materials often happen. It was only thanks to Levin's advice that there was no big problem. In the eyes of the twins, Levin is not only a future investor and technical support, but also their business mentor. Actually, I am very happy to cooperate with you. Levin also encouraged. I think you are very talented in this area. If you work hard, you may be able to do a lot of business in the future. He was naturally very satisfied with the Weasley twins. In the original book, the twins were able to start a business on campus by themselves, and they even ran a Weasley's Magic Wheezes after graduating from school, and it was prosperous. This proves that they not only have great vision and business acumen, but also have excellent alchemy, potion technology, and innovation capabilities, making them excellent investment targets. The twins were very happy to hear Levin's comments and immediately revealed their plans. Actually, we want to do some new business in the school. NC said. But there is only a plan at the moment. Fred also said. We'll come back to you when we have a plan, Levin. Of course, Levin nodded. I look forward to future cooperation. In addition to the scribal business, Levin also gained something else during this holiday. For example, he spent time going to the Burrow to exchange technology with Arthur Weasley on transforming Muggle products, and successfully made televisions, game consoles and other household appliances appear in the tower. The modified electrical appliances do not need to be plugged in and are completely driven by magic power. However, they can search for Muggle signals, and they can use both paid and free channels for free. The same goes for game consoles. As for computer and internet functions, this part is too complicated and has not yet been conquered. In addition, he also met several neighbors in Ottery St. Catchpole village under the introduction of the Weasley family. For example, Cedric Diggory and his family from Hufflepuff, and Luna Sangia, they had met on the seaside in Cornwall. September 1st is the first day of school again. Levin took Siri to platform 9 through the any door. Before leaving, he completely hid his demi-plane in the void, leaving only a piece of flat land where the tower originally existed. In this way, no one can find where their home is. Only the English themselves can reopen the passage to the tower. If you want to return to the tower elsewhere, you can only rely on the mansion technique. However, the level of this spell is not low, and neither Hermione nor Siri can master it. Levin is already thinking about creating magic items that would allow them to return to the tower if necessary. At the platform, it didn't take long for Levin to wait for Hermione, who was driven here by her father, Mr. Granger. Looking at the back of his daughter happily leaving behind the boy, Mr. Granger couldn't help but feel a little sore in his eyes. The little cotton-padded jacket she has had for 12 years has begun to no longer fit her body. The three of them walked into the platform and got on the bus. Then start looking for empty cars along the corridor. But this is not simple, most of the carriages are already occupied, although there are probably only 1 or 2 little wizards in these carriages. Levin doesn't want to get together with people he doesn't know. After walking about 2 cars, Zilly, who was leading the group, glanced into a certain box and turned around and said, "Okay, there is a slightly empty one here, and only Luna is alone." She opened the door and Chiron walked into the box. Levin and Hermione followed. "Hello, Luna," she greeted, "are you the only one here?" Luna nodded and said in a daze, "It seems like this. There were many students who wanted to come in before, but they just took a look and left." Levin looked closely and immediately understood what was going on. "I saw the little witch in front of me. She was wearing a necklace made of butterbeer corks and had her wand inserted behind her left ear. She looked weird and her beautiful face was blinded. Plus, when she read the Quibbler, she actually held the magazine upside down. No wonder few people dare to come in, for fear of meeting weirdos. But they are not afraid of this freak." The other party came to visit the tower once during the holidays, and everyone knew each other. Levin took out a large book, Fundamentals of Computer Science, and read it intently. The computer knowledge he mastered in his previous life was too advanced for computers more than 30 years ago, good Wang Zhao, and it was of no help to him in studying computer principles and turning them into magic. If he wanted to successfully transform a computer, he needed to learn it all over again. Hermione and Siri started chatting. After this summer vacation, the relationship between the two of them had grown closer unknowingly. Luna looked at them from the upside-down magazine. Soon, the train started moving, and when the food cart passed by, Hermione took the initiative to stop the cart and bought a large amount of snacks. Having earned pocket money for the first time, she couldn't wait to enjoy the fun of treating guests. The peaceful train journey was finally broken after several hours. After a burst of noisy footsteps, the door of the box was pushed open violently. The twins and Ginny poked their heads in. Their looks are hurried, especially Ginny, who looked like she was about to cry. "I didn't see them here either." There was a cry in her voice. "What's wrong?" Hermione looked at Ginny confused. "Harry. Harry is gone." Ginny burst into tears. The current attributes of the protagonist have been updated related to the work, so I won't include the word count in the main text. Chapter 103. Seeing that the box was full of acquaintances, the twins were not polite. They took 2 bottles of iced pumpkin juice from the snack pile and drank it down. They checked almost all the carriages along the way and were almost exhausted. "Hey, how come Harry is missing?" Levin asked, pretending to be surprised. "That kid, can you get lost on a train?" Zilly shook her head. This was the first time she had encountered such a road idiot. "No, I'm not lost." Ginny quickly explained, "Harry crossed the platform with us, and I was the third from last to cross the wall. Harry was right behind me at the time, so there was no way he could have gotten lost." "So, you didn't realize anything was wrong until you got in the car?" Hermione asked somewhat reproachfully. Ginny's face suddenly turned red. "I'm sorry, our family got up late today and arrived at the station 5 minutes before the train departed. At that time, everyone was in a hurry and didn't have time to say goodbye, so I didn't wait until I got on the bus." "Found Harry missing? Have you searched all the carriages?" Hermione continued to ask. As a friend, she was already starting to worry. It's not finished yet, but it's almost done. George interjected. We started looking from the rear of the car until we reached this carriage, and there were still at most 3 carriages left, Fred explained. At this moment, a faint voice sounded in the carriage. Did you just say that you were third from the bottom? Everyone looked and saw that it was Luna who was speaking. When everyone was chatting about Harry, 680 buried herself behind the magazine and seemed very insignificant. Who would have thought that people were listening carefully all the time? You mean? Ginny reacted immediately. Yes, I was the third to last pit stop. What about the last one? Luna asked. What? Her jumping question made Ginny unable to react. What she means is, since you are the third to last and Harry is the second to last, then who is the first to last? Levin sighed and explained to the girl thoughtfully. After all, if the second to last Harry doesn't catch up, then the last to last will still be watching, right? Yes, there is also the last one. Ginny clapped her hands suddenly. Then who is the last one? She suddenly looked at herself, then at her twin brother, counted on her fingers, and suddenly her eyes widened. Where's Ronald? Fred, everyone, you guys have been looking for Harry for a long time, but you didn't even find out that Ronald was missing too. These Weasleys are too exaggerated. Although Ronald has no sense of existence, he is Ginny's brother and the twins' brother. You can't just ignore it, can you? Unacceptable. Dang dang dang. At this moment, there was a sudden knocking sound on the car window. Beck, Levin and everyone turned their heads. Outside the train window, an owl was flapping its wings and following the train closely, tapping the glass with its beak from time to time to attract the attention of people inside. It's Homer. Levin quickly stood up, opened the car window, and put it in. Helmer flew into the carriage briskly, threw a roll-shaped object in front of Levin, and then stopped on the owner's shoulder to comb his feathers. Levin didn't rush to look at the goods, but took out a strip of beef jerky from his pocket and put it into the little guy's mouth. He scooped out a small spoonful of water from the snack packaging box and handed it to it. What is your owl bringing you at this time? Shirley asked curiously. Let me see, it's the Daily Prophet, Levin replied. Normally it doesn't come at this time. It's probably a temporary edition. Yeah, let me see. Zilly took the initiative to open the Daily Prophet and scanned the pages. She soon revealed an intriguing smile. Hermione, maybe you should take a look at this. Why, she handed the newspaper to the little witch beside her. It looks exciting, as expected of you Gryffindors. Hermione took the newspaper strangely and followed Siri's direction and read it. Almost instantly, her expression changed. The worry just now turned into panic, and his face began to turn pale. What's wrong, Hermione? What happened? Ginny asked concerned. Harry and Ronald, they secretly drove away Mr. Weasley's car. And they actually dared to drive to Hogwarts, being watched by muggles along the way. Be clear. Hermione said loudly, the anger evident in her tone. After hearing this, the 3 Weasleys were also shocked. The headline in the newspaper read, Muggles are shocked when Ford Anglia can fly. Hermione read to them the content of the report. 2 Muggles in London were convinced they saw an old car flying past the post office building. In Norfolk at noon, Mrs. Hetty Bellis was drying her laundry. Mr. Angus Fleet, of Peebles, reported to the Policia Euro. In short, they are all Muggle eyewitness information. The efficiency of the Daily Prophet is really fast. After hearing this, Levin couldn't help but shake his head and sighed. How come Muggles' daily newspapers are so timely? They usually report on yesterday's events. His emotion left people speechless. Is this the time to lament the newspapers? Oh, bah. Ginny wailed, they're in big trouble. This is so cool. George and Fred said in unison. That's not cool at all. The person who spoke was Percy Weasley. As a prefect, he had just patrolled all the way here. A total of 6 or 7 Muggles witnessed this incident, and they spread the news. I don't know how many staff the Ministry of Magic will send out, and how many forgetting spells will be cast to erase everyone's memories. The worst is Dad. He works in the Misuse of Muggle Articles office, but his own son, just think about it, he's going to be censored. Percy, who aspires to work in the Ministry of Magic, knows the ropes best. Now both Ginny and Hermione were worried. Levin, do you think they will be fired? Will they go to jail? Hermione asked Levin for help. Of course not. Levin patted her shoulder comfortingly. When something like this happens, just think of Dumbledore, honey. You know the principal's attitude towards Harry. Think of the previous awards ceremony. Dumbledore's status in the wizarding world is higher than you think. Hi. So, nothing will happen to them. But this is also one of Levin's dissatisfaction with Dumbledore. This is purely an act of privilege. When he saw the little witch finally relaxed, Levin showed a malicious smile again. However, just because they are fine at the Ministry of Magic, does not mean that they are fine at Hogwarts. I believe Professor McGonagall will give them fair treatment. Oh no. We may be deducted so many college points before school starts, damn it. With a swipe, Hermione's face turned pale again. But obviously, among the little wizards present, she was the only one who had done this. Levin and Siri are both Ravenclaws, and the Weasley twins themselves are big scorers and don't care about the Academy Cup. As for Ginny and Luna, the 2 first-year students weren't even sorted. Night is gradually falling, and the bus will arrive at the station soon. The witches and wizards took turns leaving the box, leaving room for the other side to change into their school uniforms and cloaks. After that, the train slowed down and finally stopped. The little wizards were pushing and shoving, and they rushed to the car door and got down to a dark and small platform. The group of people followed the crowd out of the car and said goodbye to Luna and Ginny. These two freshmen need to embark on a path that all freshmen must walk again. And they, a group of old fritters, got on the self-driving carriage. Of course, this is not true. In fact, there is a grey-black, skinny Pegasus pulling the cart. That is one of the subspecies of Pegasus, the Thestral. This kind of flying horse is invisible to most people, and only those who have seen death can see them. This is their first time entering Hogwarts as old students. They were sent to the castle auditorium, where a sumptuous dinner had been prepared to welcome new and old students. Not long after, the freshmen also came to the auditorium one after another. This year's branching has begun. Chapter 104. Professor McGonagall placed the sorting hat on the stool in front of the new students as he did in previous years. Under the anxious watch of the new students, the sorting hat sang a new song. When he is not in the branch, he may be composing songs for a whole year. But it is obvious that the Big Four forgot to inject artistic cells into the hat. This song makes people want to start the sorting immediately. Most of the freshmen in this class have no sense of presence, and they lack a superstar like Harry Potter last year. It wasn't until Professor McGonagall called out Luna Lovegood that Levin's attention was slightly caught. The girl jumped up to the chair and picked up the sorting hat, but did not put it on immediately. Instead, she flipped the hat curiously. She even took a needle out of her pocket and tried to mend the sorting hat. Oh, my God, the Big Four are here, someone come and save me. The originally proud sorting hat immediately screamed in embarrassment. That scene made Levin laugh out loud. The farce didn't end until Professor McGonagall's stern reminder. Then, the sorting hat touched the girl's head and he couldn't wait to say loudly, Ravenclaw. Ravenclaw students applauded one after another, but not too enthusiastically. Obviously, even the maverick little eagles have to say one thing when facing Luna: you seem to be a little too extreme. It wasn't until Levin took the lead in applauding that the applause became enthusiastic. The next little climax was Ginny. The Gryffindor Weasleys loudly celebrated that their sister was assigned to Gryffindor, but Ginny didn't seem so happy. She was still worried about Harry Potter, and her brother Ronald at this time. Only Snape's seat was empty on the faculty bench. It seemed that he was going to block Harry and the others. At Hogwarts, who could be the first to discover something strange about the boy who lived was definitely Snape. In this regard, his performance is even better than that of Headmaster Dumbledore and head of Gryffindor, Professor McGonagall. Because Harry is the son of the man Snape hates most and the woman he loves most, although Snape mocked Harry every day and showed his deep dislike for him, but in this world, he is the person who cares about Harry the most and hopes that he is safe the most. As for Snape's ill will towards him, there is certainly an element of revenge in this, but it is also the disguise of a double agent. Since before the Philosopher's Stone incident last year, he and Dumbledore had been convinced that the mysterious man would come back one day. As the sorting ceremony ended, the dinner finally began. It was also at this time that Professor Snape floated into the auditorium like a giant bat, went straight to the staff seat, and said something to Professor Dumbledore and McGonagall. Soon, Dumbledore frowned and began to leave his seat, and asked the two headmasters to leave with him. Levin looked at Hermione, who was far away on the Gryffindor table. Levin gave her an okay gesture, and the girl felt relieved. It seems that Harry and Ronald finally arrived at school. At the very least, Hermione only had to worry about Gryffindor's house ranking. Of course, facts have proven that even this worry is unnecessary. Since the incident happened before school started, Harry and Ronald did not deduct points from the Gryffindor. Soon, Hermione also came. She was alone and got up early as usual, preparing to review her textbooks. This directly led to Harry and Ronald being regarded as heroes by the Gryffindor students after they returned. The two of them were still a little complacent. This was Hermione's complaint to Levin at breakfast the next morning. They are still celebrating there, thinking it is such a glorious thing. The girl said angrily, if this continues, I won't be surprised at all if they are really fired. Okay, don't be angry. Levin put a piece of strawberry pudding into Hermione's mouth. Hermione glared at her, and then ate naturally, completely unaware of the surprised looks of the classmates next to her. Living together during the summer vacation made many intimate gestures between them natural. Seeing that Hermione's mood had calmed down a bit, Levin said, Gryffindors are like this many times. They just don't realize the seriousness of the problem before they do something. So, this is wrong, they should reflect deeply. Levin discovered that when Hermione said this just now, her expression was exactly the same as Professor McGonagall's. No wonder many students secretly call Hermione Little McGonagall. I just wonder when someone will call Professor McGonagall Big Hermione. Just when Hermione was angry, retribution came. A deafening roar suddenly came from the Gryffindor table. If they fire you for stealing a car, I wouldn't be surprised at all. See how I deal with you then. You probably have never thought about how your father and I felt when we found out that the car was gone. I received Dumbledore's letter last night. Your father was so ashamed that he almost died. We worked so hard to bring you up, but we didn't expect you to do something like this. You and Harry were almost A3. It's so irritating. Your father will be scrutinized at work. It's all your fault. If you don't behave yourself, we'll take you back right away. The roar finally stopped, but the effect was extraordinary, almost providing the next week's supplies. The morning classes were not difficult, especially for Levin, an unusual student. Whether it was the Transfiguration class where Professor McGonagall asked them to turn beetles into buttons, or in herbal medicine class, Miss Sprout asked them to repot the mandrake. He performed flawlessly as always and scored extra points for Ravenclaw. This state even lasted until the defense against the dark arts class in the afternoon. As a well-known best-selling author in the yin magic world, Gilderoy Lockhart made a big splash in the first class. €1 please give me flowers €1 I see you've all bought my complete set, that's great. I thought we'd do a little quiz today. Don't be afraid, just to see how you get on with your reading. After handing out the papers, Gilderoy returned to the podium and said, I'll give you 30 minutes. Now. Start. Levin looked helplessly at the paper in front of him. The questions above had nothing to do with defense against the dark arts. Instead, they were more like a fan club entrance test. 1. What is Gilderoy Lockhart's favorite color? 2. What is Gilderoy Lockhart's secret ambition? 3. What do you think is Gilderoy Lockhart's greatest achievement to date? And so on. There are 3 pages of paper, and the last question is 54. When is Gilderoy Lockhart's birthday? What is his ideal birthday gift? Half an hour later, Lockhart put the test papers away and looked through them in front of the whole class. 0, tisk tisk, almost no one remembers that I like lilac the most. I mentioned it in a year with the XZ snowman. A few students want to read Wandering with the Werewolf carefully. Chapter 12 of the book makes it clear that my ideal birthday gift would be for all magical and non-magical people to live in harmony €1 but I wouldn't turn down a bottle of Ogden-aged fire whiskey either. Halfway through the page, Lockhart suddenly exclaimed, Ah, I finally have a satisfactory answer, full marks. His smile is full of surprise, what a handsome young man like me. Levin answered all my questions, and all of them were correct. Great. 10 points for Ravenclaw. You can sit in the front seat next time. Hermione was stunned at the sight, you were obviously the first to look down on him, but you got full marks in private? But in fact, for Levin, all the books stored in his mind can be recalled at any time, and it is not difficult to get perfect scores on these questions. Levin nodded reservedly to Lockhart as a thank you for the extra points. The reason why he came out like this was not only to maintain his perfect grades, but more importantly, he wanted to pretend to be friendly to Lockhart. Only in this way can he trick him into signing his autograph. Throughout the last year, Levin had been coveting the restricted areas of Hogwarts. If you want to enter the restricted book area, you need to receive a signature array. It's hard to find such a fool who is easy to fool as a teacher. Can he fool a few more signatures? This school year, Levin has to count on Lockhart for every trip to the restricted areas. However, Lockhart's activities in the classroom did not stop there. After the test, the other party actually pushed a huge cage covered with black cloth into the classroom. Feeling the thick sulfur smell behind the cage, Levin felt bad all over. He actually brought this thing into the classroom, what on earth was Lockhart thinking? Chapter 105. Now beware. My mission is to teach you to defend yourself against the most evil the wizarding world has ever known. Lockhart grabbed the black cloth with one hand and said loudly in his exaggerated tone, you will face the most horrific things in this classroom. But remember, as long as I am here, no harm will come to you. All I ask is that you remain calm. I must ask you not to scream, Lockhart said in a low voice. That will piss them off. The other students were mesmerized by Lockhart's performance. I have to say that in addition to his excellent appearance, Lockhart's acting skills are quite passable. His voice is full of emotion when he speaks, his eyes and micro-expressions are very spot on, coupled with his rich body language. You can tell he is an experienced actor at first glance. Sometimes Levin couldn't help but sigh. The path to transcendence in this world was too narrow, causing many wizards to go astray. If in the D&D world next door, a person like Lockhart could become a bard, and then he would most likely have greater achievements that truly belong to him. Instead of relying on stealing other people's achievements as we do now. The whole class held their breath, then, look. Lockhart grabbed the black cloth 250 and pulled it away. When the black cloth was lifted, the students collectively leaned back and took a breath of cold air. The air pressure in the entire classroom seemed to drop. Under the black cloth is a huge iron cage as tall as a person. Inside the cage were a group of humanoid creatures about 20 to 30 centimeters in size, with long and narrow bat wings, brown-red, brown-green skin, and a pair of long ears. This is a Cornish elf. Some young wizards from wizarding families recognized it. Hearing this name, most of the students looked like that's it. Only Levin's face turned dark. This isn't a Cornish elf at all. The color doesn't look right. Cornwall elves are all iron green, but the little guy in front of you is brown-red or brown-green. The most important thing is that they have scorpion-like tails, and their legs are not normal human-like structures, but recurved structures similar to lizards. How could this be an elf? Lockhart is still explaining, don't be so sure, they may also be cunning little destroyers like little devils. What is possibility? They are little devils, and he is not a little devil native to this world who only knows how to cause trouble. Rather, they are devils who truly come from purgatory and from the lower planes. They are truly malicious and dangerous creatures that can kill people. They have sharp teeth and claws only found in predators, it has a highly poisonous tail hook, it can also transform into various small animals, serve powerful devils in purgatory, serving as waiters, scouts, etc. These creatures are by no means native to the world of Harry Potter, and are mostly visitors from other worlds. Levin really can't figure out why the harmless Cornish elf Lockhart got in the original novel turned into these things. What he didn't know was that the culprit was himself. The time was just before the summer vacation, the supplier who was supposed to provide Lockhart with elves was the smuggler who was conveniently arrested while Levin was hunting the chimera. As for the elf that was supposed to appear here, he had been released as a weapon by smugglers long ago, and then was forced to flee by Zilly. Lockhart had no choice but to take the risk and use the summoning elf, he thought, spell recorded in a notebook. The note came from an old wizard who he had impersonated. What Lockhart didn't know was that the spell he thought he was using to summon elves was actually a devil summoning circle. However, the students didn't care much about this little thing and still looked unbelieving. Lockhart's poor performance further confirmed their identity. And the cunning little devils also saw the truth. One by one, they all pretended to be harmless elves. Well, Lockhart shouted, let's see how you deal with them. After that, he opened the cage door. The last shackles were lifted, and the little devils suddenly showed their fangs. In the imagination of the little wizards, what they have to face is just a bunch of troublemakers. At most, I would tear a few books, pull down a few curtains, scratch a few faces. I saw a few little devils directly showing their fangs and claws and gnawing at the little wizard, making blood dripping all of a sudden. There are also little devils waving the stingers on their tails to PK people's heads. One PK will cause a big bump. There were even little devils who turned into spiders, mice, and even wild boars on the spot, causing chaos in the classroom. The little wizards screamed and fled in all directions. Professor Lockhart, the initiator of all the chaos, didn't fare well either. As the summoner, these little devils resented him for locking them in such a narrow place. So I have been eyeing him for a long time. As soon as the cage door opened, a little devil flew forward and poisoned him with a sting. Although Lockhart wanted to fight back, he couldn't stand it. The flying little devils quickly snatched his wand away and threw it out the window. Several little devils flew over, pulling Lockhart's hands and feet, forcing Lockhart into the cage, and then slammed the cage door shut. Just listen to a click. Lockhart himself was locked in the cage. Although Levin already knew that Lockhart was useless, he didn't expect him to stretch his hips like this, right? Ordinary adult wizards cannot be this weak. You have to know a few commonly used spells, right? Even a basic floating spell can deal with this little guy. But on the other hand, Lockhart can't be blamed too much. In terms of strength, these little devils are equivalent to LV2 wizards. At least half of the little wizards in the classroom can't beat them. However, Lockhart was locked up like this, and the classroom became even more chaotic. No second-grade student has ever seen this kind of world. Although they had wands in their hands, they were caught off guard by the sudden attack. Coupled with the destructive power of the little devil, for a time, there were screams and wails everywhere in the classroom. Seeing that if things continued like this, lives would be lost, so Quoin had no choice but to take action. He saw a little wizard who was bitten with blood and waved his wand, anti-evil magic circle. In the blink of an eye, the little wizard's bloody body glowed with white light. The two little devils who were biting his arms suddenly looked like they were biting into pancakes in a soldering iron. They covered their mouths and howled. All the little devils from purgatory are of the evil camp, and anti-evil spells are extremely effective against them. Immediately afterwards, he waved his wand again and fired ice arrows at the little devils. This group of visitors to purgatory are naturally highly resistant to fire and poison, but are afraid of thunder and ice. Kika! Kika! One after another, the little devils that were attacking the little wizard were frozen into lumps of ice. Immediately afterwards, he kept tearing at the mouse that was tearing at the little wizard's robe, and the spider that jumped on the girl's head. Animal holding technique. The druid's power burst out, and the two little devils who transformed into small animals thought they were immobilized and unable to move. Then the little wizard took the opportunity and pulled him to the ground, and was smashed into pieces by a copy of Walking with Trolls. Levin's counterattack reminded other little wizards. More students along the route calmed down and tried to fight back. Hermione used the skills she learned during the summer vacation, one disarming spell after another, and was able to knock away a little devil every time. Harry recited a stun spell and killed one on the spot. Ronald is more miserable. His wand had been broken in two after the car accident last night. Now it's just a matter of force, using a spell to hit a random one. He also tried to behave like Harry, but when he finished chanting the curse, what awaited him was a big explosion. He and the little devil almost died together. Seeing more and more students coming forward, Levin realized that the time had come, so he zoomed in directly. Anti-evil barrier. This is an upgraded version of the anti-evil magic circle, which can create a barrier against the evil camp and harm evil camp creatures that touch the barrier. Levin's anti-evil barrier is like a huge net bag, compressing the little devil's activity space bit by bit. Finally, when the remaining little devils were cornered, Levin cast Expulsion 5-ring protection system, forcing creatures to return to their original plane. With waves of space distortion, some little devils were driven back to the purgatory facade. There are still a few clever little things that break the windows and run away, so we can't control them. The next thing is to clean up the mess. In the process of exorcising the little devil, Levin was the first to step forward, and he was also the most experienced. Coupled with the performance last semester, the little wizard of Ravenclaw was originally headed by him. The Gryffindor was willing to obey him now. Under Levin's command, several seriously injured little wizards were rushed to the school doctor's office by their classmates. Patients with minor injuries can only walk on their own. The classroom was in disarray, turned to the ground, and even the dismantled tables and chairs, torn books, and the body of the little devil had to be cleaned up. Well, what about Lockhart? After cleaning up, Hermione pointed at Lockhart, who was locked in the cage and was unconscious the whole time, and asked, "Leave him alone, let him stay here and calm down." Levin said coldly. He has to pay a price for bringing out such a big crime. Chapter 106. After the incident involving Harry and Ronald driving to school exploded, the incident in Defense Against the Dark Arts successfully surpassed the former in terms of popularity, and dominated the hot searches of Hogwarts for a week. Harry and Ronald felt a lot more relaxed, because except for Malfoy and his gang, everyone stopped joking about Mrs. Weasley's howler letter. Instead, he made jokes about Lockhart. However, it is obvious that Lockhart became a star writer not just by pretending to be someone else's experience. He also has an extremely thick-skinned face, and he is well versed in the ways of celebrities and big VS in later generations. If such an accident happened, someone with a thinner skin would probably not be able to stay in the school anymore and would have to resign directly, setting a record for the shortest tenure as a defense against the dark arts professor. But Lockhart is different. The day after this happened, not only did he act like a normal person, he was even the same St. This kind of above-board shamelessness made the little wizards unable to deal with it. Some even began to wonder if they had actually remembered it wrong. It was Lockhart who showed off his power that day. However, this experience did not have no impact on him. At least from now on, he will never take any practical classes again. The content of the class changed to reading and acting in a drama. In each class, several little wizards are invited to perform on the podium to reproduce certain dramatic passages in their books. What about the teaching methods of courses like 17? Don't say it, don't say it. At least, for the performers, they were impressed by the details of how to subdue the dark creatures. After all, the content of Lockhart's work is based on real people and real events, and many of the methods in it are quite real. Otherwise, it would have been impossible to frighten Ciri, a professional demon hunter. But this kind of performance cannot be said to have a significant effect on the education of defense against dark arts classes, at least it can be said to be better than nothing. In this regard, the little wizards were all speechless. You love acting so much, why don't you act in a movie? Levin deeply feels that if the wizarding world can introduce Muggle movies and TV shows, then Lockhart may not shine in another field. Among the young wizards, Harry was the one who suffered the most. Maybe it's to gain popularity, maybe it's so that he can blatantly mention in his planned book My Teaching Life at Hogwarts how he trained the boy who lived and how he trained the youngest first-class medal winner. Lockhart almost regarded him and Levin as his proto copyright GA copyright S, and they must be invited to every little drama. Harry felt very uncomfortable with this. What's worse is that I don't have Levin's ability. Levin uses his superb transformation skills to take on the task of making performance props every time and avoid going on stage. Harry himself could only play various monsters on stage, and was defeated by Lockhart time and time again in front of his classmates. Because the props created by Levin are lifelike every time, and Lockhart's script is also wonderful, many communities have said that this kind of drama class is quite interesting. Lockhart's process of solving the threat of dark creatures to the villagers is quite real. Maybe he really has a talent for taking pictures. As a result, Lockhart's reputation at Hogwarts suddenly improved. But soon, the little wizards understood, Lockhart is just a false hunter of dark creatures, but there is someone else who is the real hunter of dark creatures. This afternoon, Levin and Hermione were heading to the Charms classroom. Suddenly, the outside of his classroom was surrounded by students. Everyone was standing in the corridor, and no one went in. What happened? The two looked from the door and found Professor Flitwick standing inside, talking to a very old wizard. Newt Scamander. Levin recognized the other person immediately. At the award ceremony for Sir Merlin, Dumbledore introduced him to him. At that time, the other party also praised the paper he sent to the Annual of Magical Beasts. Is it possible that the other party's visit this time is related to the paper? When Flitwick talked to the other party, his attitude was very respectful, not only because of the other party's achievements in magical creatures, but also because of Newt Scamander's age. He was a contemporary of Dumbledore. At that time, he joined Hogwarts and was assigned to Hufflepuff. The young Dumbledore was his transfiguration professor. Due to an accident, Newt had to drop out of school and started researching magical creatures alone. Later, he and the principal fought against the first generation of the Dark Lord. Today he is almost 100 years old. Suddenly, Newt saw Levin at the door and waved enthusiastically. With all the students watching, Levin walked in. "Hello Mr. Scamander, why are you here?" Levin said respectfully. He was happy to show the most basic respect to such an academically profound old man. "What else can I do?" "Of course it's about your paper." The old man smiled. "Is the article about to be published?" Levin asked confused. "But this doesn't require you to notify me personally. That's just part of it. I came to you today for both business and private matters." Scamander explained. "Let's start with personal matters first," Scamander said. "Actually, ever since I studied magical creatures, I have always had a dream, which is to study chimeras, whether alive or dead. Unfortunately, I have always had a dream. Unable to do so. This kind of creature is too powerful and too rare. So, I envy you very much. You have the luck and ability to meet the chimera of your dreams and complete the research perfectly." Levin could feel that the eyes of the old man in front of him were indeed full of envy when he looked at him. "So, can you let me, an old man, see with my own eyes the materials and results of your experiments? If it's convenient, I can go get them with you at any time." After hearing the other party's request, Levin smiled slightly. "Mr. Scamander, I have to say, you are very lucky." As he spoke, he took out an exquisite dragon skin wallet. This is not the trophy from the Christmas vacation of the first grade, but it was made by Levin during the summer vacation after he learned the space expansion spell. "I have always had the habit of carrying important experimental materials with me, and I have what you want." So, Levin took out a complete chimera skin right in this classroom. The head is made of lion skin, the body is made of sheepskin, and the tail is made of dragon skin. The three different skins are strangely connected together. At first glance, it looks like a clumsy prank by a cobbler. But the old man grabbed the skin excitedly. That's it, that's right, that's it, chimed Ramon. Not only Scamander, but the little wizards who were blocked at the door also exclaimed in surprise after seeing the fur of this legendary dark monster. Hermione timely revealed that this chimera was killed by Levin himself, for which he also received a first-class medal. Now, the little wizards were even more shocked. During the summer vacation, of course they heard the news about the chimera, and also knew that someone had received a first-class medal for it. But even though Levin's name was mentioned in the news, few people believed that it was a first-grade teacher who accomplished this feat. To be honest, the Wisengammots and the members of Lord Merlin 513 would not believe that Levin had really accomplished all this unless they saw it with their own eyes. But now there is physical evidence, and Professor Flitwick and Newt Scamander endorse it, there is no room for them not to believe it. Deafening applause soon came from the crowd. What was supposed to be a spells lesson turned into a popular science lecture on magical animals. Levin not only took out the chimera skin, but also took out a large number of specimens such as the chimera's muscles, nerves, and organs, as well as research reports from his own experiments. At this time, many young wizards had already heard the news and came over, crowding the classroom. Scamander read the experimental report on the spot for fun. While reading, he displayed the corresponding specimens and praised Levin's experiments and analysis. It turned this into a magical zoology course. The little wizards around listened with great interest. This scene made Professor Flitwick dumbfounded. In Levin's experimental report, what Scamander admires most is Levin's bold and reasonable guesses and rigorous experimental demonstration methods. It is filled with a large number of strictly controlled variable comparisons. This is something that many scholars among wizards cannot do. Finally, he sighed, if all wizards could study in the same way as you, the magic world would progress much faster than it does now. Of course. Levin thought to himself, because he completely borrowed Muggle biology and chemistry experimental standards in this aspect. This is what he wants to promote in the wizarding world. Chapter 107. Scamander returned the experimental report to the boy and said, okay, now that my personal request has been fulfilled, let's start the business. Next, I want to give you this certificate as well. With that said, he handed Levin a certificate with a gold edge. I saw it written in gilt font, Annual Discovery Award. Levin was stunned for a moment, then took the certificate. This is the first academic award he has received. In his previous life, he studied engineering and did not pursue further studies in scientific research, so his experience in this area was almost unfamiliar. They originally wanted to award you the Rookie of the Year award, but I stopped it. Scamander said with a smile, I personally feel that your paper, whether it is the discovery itself or your groundbreaking experimental methods, is of great significance to the study of magical zoology, and no one will surpass you in the next few decades. Therefore, it's really unfair to put you on the same stage as other newcomers. For this reason, I took the initiative to apply for the Discovery of the Year award for you, which is also the highest award of the year in the Annual of Magical Beasts. After listening to Scamander's slow introduction, the little wizards on the side were all shocked. We are all of the same age, why are you the only one who is so showy? While everyone is studying the content in the textbook, you can already engage in innovation and research. Not only do you innovate and conduct research, but you also directly publish your research results in top journals in the discipline. Your research results will not only be featured in top journals, but they will also be so good that they can compete for awards. Even if your research results can compete for awards, you can skip all newcomers and compete with established scholars on the same stage. Not only did you compete with veteran scholars on the same stage, but you also won in a crushing manner. What a legendary experience this is. After understanding Levin's achievements, not many people will still criticize him. The gap is too huge, all the envy and jealousy are turned into nothingness, and even the sourness cannot be felt. And now what is the focus among them? Wei Wen's own thoughts? After receiving the certificate, his first thought was not excitement. Based on his current research on arcane magic, any piece of it would be a shocking result that could overturn the theoretical basis of the entire magic world. If we take out a few more, it won't be a question of whether to reward or not. The entire magical world is not worthy of awarding him an award. Any award should be named after him. In comparison, a mere Discovery of the Year award is nothing. Rather than being happy, Quoen's real thought is, are you kidding me? Isn't this certificate issued too shabby? He doesn't require the other party to issue an award as formal as the Order of Merlin. But at least there has to be a sense of ceremony, right? Doing this is like handing out banners to people, and you can do it casually. But if you think about it carefully, it makes sense. Annual Magazine of Magical Beasts is regarded as the top academic journal on magical zoology. This kind of publication is equivalent to Nature, Science, etc. in reality. The above two publications are not very formal when awarding some annual awards. Of course, the Magical Beasts Annual is not as influential as the above two. Because in the magical world, magical zoology itself is not as important as the most basic magic studies and transfiguration. But the Magical Beasts Annual is still the top journal. However, compared to the Muggle world, Wizards' scientific research, or in other words, the top journal of magic research has one biggest shortcoming, that is, the wizard population is much lower than that of Muggles. This directly leads to the fact that the population of magic researchers among wizards is much lower than that of Muggle researchers. It is normal for a top publication in a circle of dozens or hundreds of people to be simpler than a top publication in a circle of tens or millions of people. Magical Beasts Yearbook is not the daily profit. If you don't have the spare money to do some fancy stuff, the bonus is only a symbolic 200 galleons. This award is recognized by the entire magical world. Professor Flitwick quietly explained to Levin. Oh, it dawned on Levin. That's clear. Academic journals such as Transfiguration Today and Annals of Magical Beasts attract scholars to a large extent because their authority has been recognized by the magical community. You published a paper in Transfiguration Today, whether you are in the Ministry of Magic of the Underworld or Ilvermorny School in the United States, even if the person in charge here does not know you, just take out that journal and show it to him, and he will recognize your identity as a Transfiguration scholar. Whether it is communication or employment, it is convenient all the way. Not to mention a wizard like Levin who won the annual Discovery Award from the Annual of Fantastic Beasts magazine. No matter where he goes, he will be treated as a guest by the local Ministry of Magic and the Academy. And this is how influence is built little by little. Levin has even begun to consider that before he breaks through the legend and has the ability to protect himself, should I come up with some research results? Submit more articles to various academic journals to accumulate influence. Now, let's take a picture. Scamander took out a camera and handed it to Professor Flitwick. The next issue of the Annals of Magical Beasts will publish your paper and the award you won. At this moment, a familiar greasy voice came from the distance. What's going on? Why are there so many people here? I saw Gilderoy Lockhart pushing through the crowd and striding towards them. Out of professional sensitivity, he always digs in wherever there are many people, and takes advantage of anyone who stands out. Then he saw Flitwick, who was about to take a photo of Levin, and Scamander, who was in formal attire. Lockhart obviously misunderstood. After seeing the camera, his eyes became excited. Which newspaper are you from? Who are you interviewing? Why didn't I know there was an interview today? As he spoke, he walked into the classroom and went straight to Levin, who was obviously the center of attention. He grabbed his shoulders familiarly and said cheerfully, "We meet again, Levin," who was interviewed by reporters. "How do you feel? Seeing my photos all over the newspapers makes you feel jealous, right?" He said self-righteously, "So you can't wait to make big news." "Come on, Mr. Reporter," Lockhart greeted Scamander with a smile, "you're lucky that I happen to be here. If it makes headlines, I won't be able to consider letting you take the photo." "A photo of a couple? Sorry, who are you?" Scamander was confused. This old man usually lives in seclusion. If Levin's paper hadn't been so excellent, he wouldn't have left Dorset at all. "Sorry, you don't know me? I am Gilderoy Lockhart, Order of Merlin, 3rd class, honorary member of the Defense League Against Dark Arts, and 5-time winner of the Wizard Weekly Most Charming Smile Award." Scamander still shook his head. He has seen a lot of people with 3rd-level medals. "Who do you think you are?" Lockhart saw that the other person was not interested, so he turned to Levin next to him, saw the certificate in his hand, and read, Regarding the anatomical analysis of the chimera. Chimera. I am very familiar with this magical creature. In fact, in my countless experiences of eradicating dark creatures, there was a scene where I killed a chimera, but I haven't had time to write it into a book yet. Lockhart couldn't wait to brag without thinking. "So you are the second wizard in history to kill a chimera." Upon hearing this, Scamander immediately stopped feeling sleepy and looked at him with interest. Wizards, history. Although Lockhart didn't know exactly what a chimera was, he knew as soon as he heard this that it was no ordinary guy. Even though he brags about it, he only dares to attack the more common ones like female ghosts, ghouls, and snowmen. In this way, the bullshit won't be so exaggerated and can be easily exposed. Who knew that if one of these things was killed, it would go down in history? He thought he couldn't afford to brag about a guy of this level. Don't brag about things you can't afford. This is one of the principles he has learned from years of deception. This is also the fundamental reason why he has not been exposed for so long. You, Wang Niuhao, was immediately frightened, pretending not to hear what the other party said, and then asked Levin, "What newspaper are they?" "The Magical Beasts Almanac." "Magical Yearbook of Magical Beasts? I've never heard of the name. It seems to be a small newspaper." Then his back straightened again. Fortunately, it's not a big newspaper, so a little timidity won't hurt his reputation. If the other party reports something, he can also use the excuse that tabloids are chasing rumors for fame. But after hearing these words, the little wizards burst into an uproar. Forget about ordinary wizards who are unlearned and incompetent. A wizard like you, Lockhart, who deals with dark creatures every day, doesn't even know about the Fantastic Beasts Annual? Levin almost asked, "Then do you know how net?" Seeing other reactions, Lockhart also felt that he might have made a serious mistake. He didn't care what made the headlines, just found an excuse and ran away. Where did Professor Dumbledore find such a funny guy? Scamander complained in a voice that could be heard by the young wizards. He should be in the circus, not Hogwarts. Lockhart's reputation has improved slightly for a few days, but its deletions have declined again. Chapter 108. The tides at Hogwarts change as quickly as the wind. Within a few days, the Annals of Fantastic Beasts, a niche academic magazine, became popular among the young wizards at Hogwarts. Walking on campus, you will see a little wizard holding a book almost every few steps. Everyone rushed to read the articles inside, especially Levin's anatomical analysis of chimera beasts and the formation mechanism of its dark magic power, regardless of whether they understood it or not. Then in the communication with colleagues, he mentioned a few awkward terms in the paper, such as pericardiophrenic artery, atrial isovolumetric systole, etc., as if not doing so was not enough to prove that he understood. During lunchtime, Harry was eating lunch with Ronald and Hermione at the long Gryffindor table, and he saw Hermione spreading a copy of the Fantastic Beasts yearbook on an empty dinner plate. She kept holding the magazine after eating, and occasionally picked up a pen to write something on it. I said, Hermione, could you stop holding that magazine all the time? Ronald said impatiently, I really don't understand what's so good about that kind of book. Of course, everyone is reading the Annals of Magical Beasts now. If you read Levin's paper, you will realize how little your previous understanding of magical creatures was. Hermione retorted sharply, even Mr. Scamander highly praised this paper, especially the experimental methods used in 340. There are many thought-provoking methods that cannot be learned in textbooks. Don't you study with Levin every day? Doesn't it seem to him that you are hiding something secret? Harry asked doubtfully. Levin is not that kind of person. Hermione frowned and asked Levin's defense seriously, it's just that some theories are too advanced and I can't master them yet. In fact, being able to understand and being able to see through the theory behind are two different things. In the process of writing this article, he conducted many experiments that they all participated in it personally, but that doesn't prevent him from writing this article, but I can't. This article actually has your credit. Ronald said sourly, and he didn't know where the target of his sourness was. If it were me, I would also strongly appreciate that article. Harry poked Ronald. Ronald said unhappy, what's wrong? Did I say something wrong? Of course that's not right. I just recommend this article purely from the academic field, and it has nothing to do with whether I participated in it or not. Hermione stared at him fiercely, and Ronald felt as if he was being stared at by Professor McGonagall. Mr. Weasley, if I were you, I would try my best to write articles like that instead of saying weird things. Hermione snorted, turned away from talking to Ronald, and continued to draw in the magazine. Harry had a headache and was afraid that the two of them would quarrel again. This happened often since the first night of school, and quickly changed the subject. Hermione, what are you writing? After Ronald heard this, he couldn't help but leaned over, and then said in surprise, why did you draw a heart on Levin's name? I saw Parvati Patil would do this on Lockhart's class schedule. When her little secret was revealed, Hermione closed the magazine suddenly and blushed angrily, this is none of your business. After saying that, he stood up and put away his books. Goodbye. I'm going to the library. She glared at Ronald and left in a hurry. When Hermione walked away, Harry whispered, Ronald, you shouldn't ask that question, that's too stupid. I'm just curious. Why is she so sensitive? Parvati was like this before. Ronald curled his lips and said. You provoked Parvati before. Harry was speechless. It's just a glance. Don't you think there's something wrong with Hermione, Parvati, and the others? Or are girls so sensitive? Until this moment, Ronald didn't realize what he had done wrong, and even tried to persuade Harry, it's not like us. You see, we usually have so much fun and we never quarrel like that. Harry sighed, if it were in the past, he wouldn't think there was something wrong with Ronald. But recently, he suddenly wanted to draw a heart on the name of the girl named Jiangqiu. Therefore, he began to feel the same way about certain things. Seeing that Harry didn't speak, Ronald said to himself, forget it, just be angry when you're angry, since she won't copy her homework for us anyway. Harry was even more speechless, do you want, by AA, to listen to what you are saying? Have you forgotten how you passed your first grade exam? He shook his head, and finally took out a copy of the Magical Yearbook of Magical Beasts from his bag. No, Harry, you actually read this magazine. Ronald felt betrayed for a moment. But Harry said without realizing it, I just suddenly discovered that I am still very interested in magical creatures. The reason was certainly not as simple as Harry made it sound. At breakfast today, he saw with his own eyes Jiangqiu holding a copy of the Magical Yearbook of Magical Beasts asking Levin for his autograph, and asking him questions. That was the treatment he dreamed of. It seems that Jiangqiu also likes this magazine very much. If he can understand it, there won't be no topics to talk about when he has the opportunity to chat with Jiangqiu in the future. So he borrowed a copy from George and Fred. Unexpectedly, when he turned to Levin's article with a long title, he was embarrassed to find that he couldn't understand it at all. In fact, this is also a problem faced by most young wizards, including Jiangqiu. There is a huge gap between them and Levin. Only certain senior students could see the excellence of this piece of paper. For example, Ravenclaw's prefect Pinello, she had patted her thigh more than once, envious of Zilly's decisiveness. Why wasn't I as shameless as you before? She leaned on Zilly's shoulder and pretended to cry, it would be great if I could be so shameless as an old cow eating young grass. Then he turned around and was spanked by Shirley. Because I really couldn't understand it, the Fantastic Beasts Almanac craze passed quickly. Harry no longer has to worry about how to have a common topic with the goddess in his heart when he can't understand the paper. And soon, he got the opportunity to write about a goddess face to face. This year's Quidditch season is coming. Since last year's game, Ravenclaw has been motivated by Levin and is determined to defend the Academy Cup and Quidditch Cup under Levin's leadership. Siri was particularly concerned about this matter, and she urged Roger to apply for permission to use the Quidditch training ground earlier. Your method is really great, Levin. On the way to the stadium, Roger was happy and disappointed at the same time. Same as you said, with just a few compliments, Professor Gilderoy Lockhart will gladly donate his signature and not care where you use it. I don't understand. Why would my mother be obsessed with this guy? Levin is also very satisfied with this result. In Ravenclaw, Roger is known as a loudmouth. After this news spreads, many young wizards will definitely go to Lockhart to get signatures. There should be many visitors to the restricted book zone this year. When the time comes when he uses Lockhart's signature to go to the restricted book area, there shouldn't be any surprises. He was thinking like this as he came to the Quidditch pitch. As a result, I saw from a distance that there were already people there. A total of 2 groups of people were facing each other in the center of the stadium. Chapter 109. The 2 sides in the confrontation were the Quidditch players from the 2 houses of Gryffindor and Slytherin. Haha, what kind of weather is it today? Even Ravenclaw is here. Marcus Flint, Slytherin's Quidditch captain, sneered. This is our training time. We woke up very early. Please get out. Oliver Wood, Gryffindor's Quidditch captain, yelled angrily. Marcus Flint was bigger than Wood. He replied with the sly air of a troll, it's a big place here, Wood. At this time, the Gryffindor female team members, Alia, Angelina, and Katie also came looking for the sound. There were no girls among the Slytherin team members. They stood side by side in a row, squinting at the Gryffindor team members with exactly the same expression. But I've reserved the stadium. Wood said sharply, I've reserved it. Oh, said Flint, but I have a specially signed note from Professor Snape. I, Professor Severus Snape, have given permission for the Slytherin team to train on the Quidditch pitch today. Train their new seekers. Levin watched them noisy from behind and found it very interesting. Especially Gryffindor and Slater, their captains, Wood and Flint, literally mean Wood followed by Flint. No wonder the 2 quarreled as soon as they met. What a coincidence, we also have Professor Gilderoy Lockhart's specially signed permission. Roger interrupted not to be outdone, wait, you have a new seeker? Who is it? A smaller boy appeared from behind the 6 tall team members, with a proud smile on his pale pointed face. It was Draco Malfoy. But what Levin noticed were the brooms in their hands. 7 brand new, smooth and shiny flying broomsticks, with 7 lines of beautiful gold characters Nimbus 2001, dazzled the team members' eyes in the morning sunshine. The latest model, just came out last month, Flint said nonchalantly, lightly dusting off a bit of dust from the top of his broom. I believe it is much faster than Harry and Levin's Nimbus 2000 series. As for the old-fashioned sweeping 7 stars, he glanced at the 2 teams maliciously, sweeping 7 stars is indeed the mainstream, and the Weasley twins have even older sweeping 5 stars. These brooms, use them to sweep the floor. For a moment, the training ground was silent. Levin and Shirley looked at each other, and both showed the brooms in their hands. How do you know I changed to Nimbus 2001? Wood's face became even paler. The 2 main opponents actually started to replace the latest brooms. Krypton Gold rich people are so outrageous, can this game still be played? Malfoy stared into Harry's eyes, licking his dry lips, his eyes burning. Finally, the distance between him and Potter is even closer. Although one of them is a Gryffindor and the other is a Slytherin, they are separated from each other by the academy. But on the court, he can communicate with Potter about his playing skills. When the game starts, they can chase each other to their heart's content in public, and have physical collisions and exchanges on the broomsticks in simple and easy to understand terms until they are dripping with sweat. This awkward Slytherin boy has been trying to be friends with Potter since the day he entered first year. But because the method was too naive and the pure blood shame Weasley hindered him, he has always been unable to love. But in Malfoy's heart, Potter is actually the same person as him, and they should be friends. Just when his thoughts were wandering, the annoying Weasley suddenly appeared. Hermione and Ronald came together to visit Quidditch practice. After receiving training from Levin, Miss Granger was finally able to appreciate the fun of Quidditch. What's wrong? Ronald asked Harry strangely, why don't you play ball? Why are there 3 teams here? I'm the Slytherin team's new seeker, Weasley, Malfoy showed off proudly, hoping to defeat his opponent in this way. Just now everyone was admiring the brooms my dad bought for our team. As he said that, he looked at Ronald with evil intentions, so, what are you doing here? Weasley? This is the territory of Quidditch players, and you are not welcome here. Listen, Weasley, there is going to be a Quidditch match at Hogwarts. Harry and I will both be attending, but guess who won't be invited? Ronald's face turned red with anger at his words. He really wanted to play ball with Harry, chase each other to their heart's content in public, and have physical contact and communication on the broom in a simple and easy way until they were dripping with sweat. But unfortunately he has neither talent nor money, so he can't do this at all. If it was in the past, if it couldn't be done, it wouldn't be possible. But now Malfoy actually became a Quidditch player. The thought of Malfoy being able to chase each other on the field with his Harry, having physical contact and communication on the broom in a simple and easy to understand manner until he was sweating profusely, made him so angry that his liver ached. Malfoy's triumphant appearance really attracts hatred. At least Hermione couldn't stand it. At least none of the Gryffindors have to pay to join the team, Hermione scoffed bitterly, they get in purely based on ability. Being poked in the painful spot, Malfoy's proud face turned red, and he became angry and said, no one asked you, you stinking little mudblood. But as soon as he finished speaking, he realized something was wrong. It seems that there are rumors that the mudblood has a good relationship with the guy from Ravenclaw. Although that person was also a mudblood, he was someone he couldn't afford to offend. Unfortunately, it's too late to regret. After he said these words, it was like a depth charge. Flint had to rush in front of Draco to prevent someone from jumping on him and FG him. Alia screamed, how dare you? Even Ronald, who only quarreled with Hermione every few days, subconsciously took out his wand. Zhangqiu looked at Levin nervously, fearing that he would do something terrible. Please give me flowers. She had been paying attention to this handsome fellow member for a long time and knew about Hermione's relationship with him. Just a few days ago, Scamander confirmed in front of everyone that Levin killed a chimera with his own hands and escaped unscathed, completing a feat that no wizard in history has been able to accomplish. If he puts the means to deal with the Chimera on Malfoy, then he will have to become Malfoy-chan. Now I can only hope that as a Muggle-born, he doesn't know what Mood-blood means. However, in her eyes, Levin looked serious at this time, frowning, staring at Malfoy closely. Obviously he knows how dirty this sentence is. But he just crossed his arms and had no intention of taking action. Is it difficult for him to have a conflict with Hermione? Zhang Qiu guessed with some surprise, but soon, she understood the real reason. Levin didn't take action because he felt he didn't need to do so. Because Hermione took matters into her own hands. Expelliarmus. Miss. Before anyone could react, a red light passed over Flint's shoulder and hit Malfoy's face. His wand and Nimbus 2001 flew out, and he stumbled. But it's not over yet. Hermione waved her wand again, activated rope. Malfoy's clothes immediately seemed to come to life, twisting on their own, and quickly tied up the original owner. At this time, Malfoy lost his weapon and could not move his hands and feet. He could only twist around on the ground like a green maggot. Seeing Malfoy being attacked, his two little followers couldn't stand it anymore. As Slytherins, Crabbe and Goyle do not have the cunning of Slytherins. Their IQs are very worrying, but they are very tall and strong. Their families have been attached to the Malfoy family for generations. Their fathers licked Lucius Malfoy, and they are Draco's followers. Now that they saw their boss suffering a loss, they subconsciously rushed forward. Facing the two men's surprise attack, Hermione showed no fear. Grease technique. A thick pool of oil appeared under their feet, the two big fools both slipped and fell. Hermione resisted the urge to add a burning hand and used activated rope twice more to tie up the two of them. Fortunately, she was calm enough, otherwise they would have been imprisoned in the school doctor's office. Hermione's wonderful performance shocked everyone around her. In less than 10 seconds, Hermione completed 3 kills by herself. Is this still Hermione? No wonder you didn't take action. Zhang Qiu looked at Levin with more complicated eyes. He knew very well that Hermione from last semester was not at this level. She heard from Prefect Pinello that Levin bought a house in the village of Ottery St. Catchpole during the summer vacation. Miss Granger spent her summer vacation with him. Now that she has such fighting power, it is all due to this boy. Chapter 110. Seeing his teammates being knocked down, Flint finally couldn't bear it anymore and yelled, "Everyone, come with me, don't let her get too arrogant." No matter how much Malfoy curses, he is still a junior in the same house and a player on the team. If he was beaten in front of someone and he didn't take action, then who would believe him in the future? What's more, my family just donated a badge of Nimbus 2001 to the team. Just for the broomstick's sake, they had to avenge Malfoy. Chaser Adrian Pusey asked weakly, "Are you really going to take action?" Levin Green is watching from the side. It is said that he has a good relationship with the girl. When Flint heard this, he became furious. There are so many of us. No matter how powerful Levin Green is, he may not be able to kill us all before his magic power is exhausted. The Slytherins thought he was right, so they all pointed their wands at Hermione. Now, the situation became serious. The 3 Malfoys are just 3 young wizards who have just entered the 2nd grade. They have not mastered a few spells, but they take up a lot of people. And now, including Flint, there are 6 or 7 Slytherins, each of whom is in the 4th year or above and has mastered many more spells than the little wizards in the lower grades. For Hermione, it is undoubtedly a big trouble. Under Zilly's gaze, Zhang Qiu took the initiative to approach Levin and asked, "Why, aren't you ready to take action now?" Ever since she heard that Levin killed the Chimera with his own hands, she had always wanted to see Levin's heroic fighting spirit. But Levin still crossed his arms, looking confident. "It doesn't matter, Hermione can handle it." Facts have proved that Miss Granger's response is indeed amazing. Facing the siege of 6 or 7 people, she was not prepared to resist forcefully. That's the stupidest way to fight. All she saw was a wave of her magic wand, cloud and mist technique. In an instant, the surroundings became filled with smoke, and the Slytherins suddenly lost track of her. If you don't even know where your opponent is, how can you hit the enemy? Flint tried to use the cyclone curse to clear the clouds and fog, but how can the fog formed by magic be so easy to clear? It took a while to get the fog to disperse. But there was no trace of Hermione in her original position. Where is she? Where have you gone? Slytherin was confused and had no idea what was going on. However, Levin's psychic powers could barely be detected, and Hermione was in a state of invisibility at this time, sneaking into them quietly. "I'm here." Suddenly, the girl's voice sounded among them. The Slytherins subconsciously looked in the direction of the sound. They could see the girl's figure floating in the air. Then suddenly a white light flashed. Glitter dust. The light burst out like a flash bomb, making several little snakes dazzle with stars in their eyes, tears in their eyes, and unable to see. The opponent entered a blind state and temporarily lost combat effectiveness. Then, the duel will enter garbage time. Hermione fired her wand and subdued them one by one, tying them up with their clothes. The number of green maggots on the pitch quickly increased from 3 to 9. "Maggots, you look at me and I look at you, and they all sigh. They seem to have provoked some serious guy. This time I'm embarrassed. How should we deal with this kind of thing? Should we tell Professor Snape? If you don't say it, they won't be able to swallow it. Tell me, what should I say? That they were beaten by a second-year Muggle-born wizard? Or 1 against 7? So hard." As for the Gryffindors and Ravenclaws, they looked at Hermione differently. In their eyes, Hermione was full of light at this time, like a Valkyrie. Especially Ronald. For him, the scene just now was too relieving. Hermione chopped down the most hated Malfoy and all the senior students like a chopping melon. He wished he was the one who did this. So, regardless of the awkwardness he had with Hermione before, he took the initiative and asked, Hermione, how did you do that? I mean, why did you suddenly become so powerful? That's because Levin teaches well. I trained with him for a while during the summer vacation. After saying that, she looked at Levin, who was smiling at her gently. To be so good in one summer vacation, this training must be very good. Ronald praised, if only he would be willing to teach me. Hermione completely agreed with this. After seeing Siri and Levin hunting chimeras together, Hermione also realized her own weakness. So she trained extra hard every day. At that time, she spent at least 2 hours every day sparring with Levin. This kind of practical training is very painful at first. If I hit her just a little harder, she would be in so much pain that she would be unable to walk. But after becoming a little more proficient, she began to get better. But after all, Levin is not an opponent on the same level as her. Every time, she would be so tired that she was sweating profusely and exhausted. You can fall asleep even if it touches the floor. But she still looks forward to training every day. This kind of training can make her truly feel full and satisfied. Hermione is sincerely grateful to Levin for his hard work. He allowed her to grow from an ordinary Muggle girl into a real witch. With the Slytherin team being dealt with by Hermione alone, they could no longer hinder the Gryffindors' training. As for Ravenclaw, after all, they have no fundamental conflict with the Gryffindors. In addition to Hermione and Levin's reputation, Wood simply allocated half of the field to Ravenclaw, and both sides practiced together. Everyone is happy. And what about the Slytherins? They were hung by Levin in the auditorium, watching them practice, and were not put down until the evening. This matter did not cause a big fuss, at least not to the professor. Malfoy thought about complaining to Snape, but was held down by Flint and others. They don't want to make a fuss known to everyone. There was no way, for Malfoy, this kind of thing would be a big deal if it was too big. Anyway, it was not the first time that Malfoy was beaten because of his bad mouth, and his skin was already bruised. But for them, as long as the professor is not involved, it is just a petty quarrel among students. When others ask, they will say it is a rumor, an exaggeration, or a bragging. In this case, they will be laughed at for a week or two at most. Others will forget about it. But once it comes to the professor, it will be equivalent to the official conclusion of the matter. And once identified, they might even be tied to the Slytherin pillar of shame, and would be pulled out and whipped by Gryffindors every year. After that, the Slytherin Quidditch team developed a phobia of Hermione and would avoid her whenever they saw her. This did give the Gryffindor Quidditch players some credit. And Levin's reputation among the little wizards has increased a bit. In the eyes of the little wizards, Hermione was able to challenge an entire Quidditch team just by getting guidance from Levin. Then Levin has no idea how high he is going to be. For a time, many people even thought that if Levin were to be the defense against the dark arts professor, he would be much better than Lockhart. They're playing Levin here, but Levin still has to make a living under Lockhart. After another defense against the dark arts lesson, Levin came to Lockhart with a note. Professor Lockhart. Levin stopped him as he was about to leave the classroom. I want to borrow this book from the library. I hope to learn some knowledge about werewolves from it. Levin handed the note to Professor Lockhart, but this book is in the restricted area of A Library 3.0, so I need a teacher to sign the note. I believe that this book will help me understand you. The humanoid restoration spell mentioned in Wandering with Werewolves. Ah, werewolf. Hearing this, Lockhart smiled enthusiastically. This book is very exciting, isn't it? Indeed, you are very good at dealing with chimeras, but when it comes to dealing with werewolves, I still have a little confidence. Of course, who wouldn't object to me giving the best student in the grade a little extra help? As he spoke, he pulled out a huge peacock brush, quickly signed a big cursive name on the note without even looking at the words on the note, and returned the note to Levin. But I have to admit that the magic spell to restore human form is too complicated, and I can't use it successfully every time. Good guy, are you saying this because you are afraid of being exposed? Are you giving me a warning in advance? But Levin doesn't intend to do this. This whole semester's restricted reading plan is directed at him. Taking this signed note, Levin said goodbye happily and left. Chapter 111. Levin got the signature and immediately headed to the library. Of course he didn't want to learn about werewolves. Werewolf? What werewolf? Which werewolf soul is more attractive? The books in the restricted area, Levin has long wanted to read them. He has even decided to take advantage of this semester to read as many books in the restricted area as possible. But the most urgent thing at the moment is to find some research and discussion on the soul. He owes Helena's ghost a crown. Except for Professor Lockhart, I'm afraid no professor would sign a note without looking at it. This also includes the defense against the dark arts professor in the next few years. Entering the dull and quiet library, Levin found Mrs. Pants. Gilderoy Lockhart. She glanced suspiciously and took the note from Levin's hand. But she didn't let it go directly, but said earnestly, most of the books in the restricted area are not suitable for little wizards like you. Faced with Mrs. Pants's dissuasion, Levin could only show a sincere smile, and at the same time silently turned on the charm human effect to the maximum. This is actually because Professor Lockhart thinks that my performance is better than other little wizards in the defense against the dark arts class. So he gave me a little extra help, trying to teach me some things outside of the textbook. Here, Levin plays a word game. At the same time, she secretly prayed that Mrs. Pants was also a fan of Professor Gilderoy Lockhart. After listening to his words, Mrs. Pence looked at the signature in her hand again. Although he didn't show any expression on the surface, Levin's psychic ability could detect that there was a feeling of joy in the other person's heart. Good guy, you can hide it deep enough. Sure enough, Professor Lockhart is a friend of middle-aged and elderly women. Mrs. Pence opened the bars of the restricted book area with a click. Levin walked in and saw a dozen low bookshelves in front of him. Compared with those bookshelves outside that are built from floor to ceiling and are 6 or 7 meters high, the bookshelves in the restricted book area are only over 2 meters high, which is really not worth mentioning. But in terms of the preciousness of books, the gap between the two sides is obvious. None of the books in the restricted book area are simple. Levin could see that many books on the bookshelf were not simply placed, but were physically bound and sealed with chains and hemp ropes. There are also books that just have a seal on the outside, but when you get closer, you can tell that the seal is engraved with ancient magic texts. Of course, not every book in the restricted book zone is dangerous enough to need to be sealed. But if you use detect magic to look at it, you will find that almost every book here is exuding the light of magic. This is why most real magic books are unique. Some knowledge itself contains power, the most extreme of them, such as the books of the old ones, will pollute the spirit as long as they are read, and the viewer will either fall into madness or become a monster. For this kind of book, copying techniques and scholar's touch cannot take effect, so you can only read it by yourself. Levin walked back and forth between the bookshelves, looking at the title of each book to see if it was what he needed. Powerful Potion, Book of Spells, Fatal Curse, True Interpretation of the Jade Record, Great Grimoire, Secret Garden Rose. Sure enough, the books here are more dangerous than the last. For example, in the book The Great Grimoire, Levin could feel the terrifying power contained in it. Just by simply opening it, it could swallow up a person's life force. In comparison, books like Powerful Potion and True Explanation of Jade Record that don't even have magic power are just a breath of fresh air. The reason why this kind of book is also locked in the forbidden book area is because some of the magic potion formulas and alchemy formulas recorded in it are very dangerous. Whether it is manufacturing or using, accidents are very easy to occur, but the book itself has no power of chaos. When encountering this kind of book, Levin would take it out, directly use scholar's touch, and collect it later. Levin wandered among the bookshelves for about 10 minutes, and when Mrs. Pence was almost impatient, he found the book he needed, the Book of Seth. It is said that the author of this book is a spirit named Seth. It has completed reincarnation and lives in the formless world. It has no physical body but can conjure the desired environment at will. Regardless of whether the subsequent boast is true or not, Levin can indeed feel the powerful spiritual energy in this book. Then, based on the principle that the content of the magic book is related to the power contained in the magic book, I chose it. In fact, if you want to deal with Horcruxes, the most direct way is to read the magic book called The Secret of Advanced Black Magic. It was from this book that Tom Riddle found out about making Horcruxes. Unfortunately, after Dumbledore became the headmaster, he immediately transferred Advanced Dark Arts Revealed and a batch of books he considered dangerous to the headmaster's office. Levin was quite dissatisfied with this kind of thing. Even Dumbledore had no right to decide what books wizards could and could not access. But now that the situation is stronger than human beings, he can only look for research related to the soul. So, Levin found Mrs. Pence with this large, thick book with a brown cover under his arm. Mrs. Pence looked at the Book of Seth for a while and handed it to Levin again. During this period, she couldn't help but remind, "Be careful, Mr. Green. This book is very strange. Anyone who has read it can't remember what they saw. If you ask me, this is not suitable for your students." "Ah, thank you for reminding Mrs. Pence, I will be more careful." Levin said a few words, took the books, and quickly left the library. He couldn't wait to read it. But Levin did not choose to return to the dormitory or stay in the library. Instead, he found a deserted corner and directly used the mansion technique. The next moment, he appeared in the demi-plane. For Levin, there is no safer place than here. Levin went to the basement of the tower and brought a rocking chair to the laboratory. Because it is a laboratory, the defense level of the surrounding walls, floors, and ceilings is much higher than that of the rooms upstairs. Moreover, defensive spells were cast, just to prevent possible accidents. Levin brought the Book of Seth to his eyes, and upon closer inspection, he noticed that there seemed to be something swimming on the cover of the book, as if a wandering spirit had come from somewhere. He ignored the strange cover and opened it directly. In an instant, a burst of shrill, blood-curdling screams pierced the peace and quiet, and this power seemed to hit the soul directly. It's Banshee's wail. Mental barrier. Levin immediately sensed something was wrong, and immediately gathered his spiritual energy into a barrier to block damage to 443's soul. But this is only treating the symptoms, not the root cause. This Banshee howl cannot be allowed to continue, it must be stopped. Silence technique. This book felt like someone was strangling its throat, and the shrill voice suddenly stopped, not even a buzzing sound could be made. Now, I can finally read this book. Levin gently opened the page of the book again. With the blessing of silence, Banshee's wail was no longer enough evidence. He could read the contents of the book. Levin found that the book did not describe any soul at the beginning, but provided a mysterious explanation about God, the world, time, and other mysterious things, which seemed worthless at first glance. The other parts of the book are also filled with fanatical delusions about the devil, hell, and heaven, as if they were the craziest ravings of a religious maniac and psychotic patient, and are not at all like the writings of a wizard. But after reading it carefully, I discovered that the author's exploration of the soul is in it. The so-called heaven, hell, gods, and devils are just the author's concrete representations of good and evil thoughts in the soul. Maybe the author of this book really went crazy in the process of exploring the power of the soul, but he did subconsciously record some truly essential knowledge. The premise is that readers can see through the metaphors. The above books, including this Seth book, are either original works or have real-life prototypes. They are all classic occult texts. 5/4, d. 22/44. It's not easy to get a new book on the shelves. I'd like to ask for a wave of custom orders, flowers, monthly votes, reviews, and rewards. If you have votes, please give them to me as the author. This is really important to me. Chapter 112. You read the Book of Seth and understood the nature of the soul. You realized the expertise soul control, and you obtained the necromancy school specialization. The soul is the essence of spiritual power. You have a deeper understanding of spiritual power, and your psychic warlock level +2 Levin was sitting in the recliner, feeling the power he had gained from reading the Book of Seth, and he couldn't help but feel a little astonished in his heart. Isn't this the ability of a warlock in World of Warcraft? Soul Mastery grants Levin several spells, Soul Tier, Level 1 Necromantic System, which directly causes damage to the soul and puts it into a weak state. Absorb Souls, 2-level Necromantic System, absorb the souls of the weak living or dead, and create soul fragments. Soul fragments are necessary materials for casting some other spells. Creating Soul Stones, 2-level Necromantic System. By carving soul marks on objects with magical adaptability, you can create soul containers. Soul Link, Level 3 Necromantic System, Soul Link with the contracted creature, the damage suffered by the caster can be shared by the contracted creature. Soul Fire, 5-ring Necromantic System, ignites a flame that can only burn the soul, causing terrible damage to the soul. If the enemy dies, soul fragments will be produced. Soul Ritual, 7-ring Necromantic System, consumes soul fragments to build a soul well, which can quickly restore the vitality and magic power of nearby creatures. Soul Stone, it can contain the recently deceased or ownerless soul. Soul Fragments, fragments composed of soul power. Soul fragments can be used to cast special magic, perform magic rituals, and make deals with devils in purgatory. Basically covers the research on the soul by warlocks in World of Warcraft. With this set of skills, Levin can interfere with ethereal souls and become their nemesis. The reason why Voldemort's Horcrux is powerful is because ordinary people can't do anything with it. But in front of Levin, who can interfere with the soul, any Horcrux is just a younger brother. He could completely bypass the magical defense of the Horcrux and attack the soul inside it directly. In addition, these spells have other wonderful uses. For example, after killing an enemy, Levin can use the Soul Stone to imprison the enemy's soul so that it has no chance of resurrection. Or when a friend dies irreparably, Levin can use the Soul Stone to temporarily preserve his soul for future resurrection. At this point, World of Warcraft's warlocks have achieved quite profound results. In the D&D world, Soul Imprisonment Technique and Soul Binding Technique that imprison the soul are 8th and 9th level spells respectively, and can only be used by real archmages. But in World of Warcraft, any new surgeon can create soul stones to collect souls everywhere. And now, having just learned this series of spells, he was about to find a target to try his hand at. So, which cutie is lucky enough to be Levin's target? Now that Levin has finished reading the Book of Seth, Levin directly cancelled the mansion technique and returned to Hogwarts. He ran directly to the 8th floor of the castle, stopped in front of the mural with the troll, and skillfully opened the hidden room in the room of requirement. Levin walked in. The place was still the same as before, with bottles, cans, tattered textbooks, strange-looking robes and other strange things hidden everywhere. It was by hunting for treasure among these gadgets that he made his first pot of gold. Just like that, Levin started wandering around the room of requirement. He looked around and around, exploring areas he had never reached before in the goal of his trip in this huge garbage dump. Soon, he found an item that matched the description in his memory. It was a pockmarked stone statue of an old wizard, wearing a crown of dirty, worn-out curls and what looked like an ancient, faded crown. At first glance, I thought it was a head mold from a hair salon. But Levin knew that this was his goal. He walked towards the stone statue, using his psychic powers to close his consciousness as he walked. When he walked to the stone statue, a hoarse voice sounded, "Are you, a young wizard from Hogwarts?" This voice is somewhat familiar. Levin remembered that he had heard the scream of this voice when he was bullying Professor Quirrell. "Ah, hello, Voldemort, should I say long time no see? Or, meeting for the first time?" Levin said hello in his heart, but showed a naive expression on the surface. "Who are you?" "Kid, do you know the Sorting Hat?" the husky voice asked. "Yes, I am a young wizard at Hogwarts, and of course I am the Sorting Hat," Levin said in a knowing tone. The hoarse voice continued, "Now that you know the Sorting Hat, it's easy to understand. I am the Will in Ravenclaw's crown, similar to the Sorting Hat." "Really?" Levin made an expression of disbelief. "Great. I heard that wearing Ravenclaw's crown can gain wisdom comparable to Ravenclaw's, but this crown has been lost for thousands of years. In fact, the crown has never been lost." Crown explained, "I was left here by Ravenclaw, waiting for the arrival of her true successor. Now that I've found you, I'm destined for you, right?" Levin said, suppressing his joy. "Finding the crown is only the first step," the crown taught earnestly, "you still have to accept my test." "What test?" "Put on the crown of Ravenclaw and let go of your heart, just like you put on the Sorting Hat. Then I will know whether you are the descendant of Ravenclaw." The sound of the crown is like a whisper, extremely alluring. "As long as you successfully break through the test, I will impart all the wisdom of Ravenclaw to you." "Marvelous." Levin put on an impatient look, he stepped forward, grabbed the crown, and lifted it directly over his head. Great, kid, that's it. The voice of the crown was still chattering in Levin's ears. However, when the crown touched his hair and was about to be put on his head, Quoin stopped what he was doing. What are you waiting for? Boy, don't you want to gain the wisdom of the Ravenclaw? The crown also tried to seduce him. But Levin just smiled coldly. I'm waiting for the skill CD, what are you waiting for? Having said that, before the crown could react, Levin's hands grabbing the crown ignited with pale and transparent flames. The flame was not violent. The flames danced in Levin's hands as if they had no temperature at all. But when it spread to the crown, the flames rose up, accompanied by it is the mournful howl from the crown. What kind of flame is this? Well, it still smells the same. Levin was extremely satisfied with the reaction of the crown, or the remnant soul in the crown. This scream was exactly the same as Professor Quirrell's scream when he touched Harry's hot body. Actually, for me, it takes a long time to prepare a 5-level spell. As long as you are not so active, soul fire may not be able to burn you. I can only say that you will be useless if I give you the chance. Unfortunately, the Horcrux fragments burned by soul fire could not respond to Levin's taunt, and soon turned into nothingness in the flames. Soul fragment +1. Is it just one soul fragment? You are too lazy, demon. Looking at the product of soul fire in his hand, a transparent fragment, Levin couldn't help but complain, this is so sorry for your status as the Dark Lord. Putting away the fragments, Levin looked at Guanmi and Liang. Well, this is a real treasure. Let me see what functions it has. Chapter 113. Levin does what he says. He used magic to check repeatedly and made sure that the crown did not contain any negative power or any strange will, and then he put it on his head. This time I really wore it. In an instant, he felt his brain become clear, but that was all. Apart from slightly enhancing intelligence and spellcasting ability, this crown does not seem to have any additional power. I always feel sorry for its prestigious reputation. However, in the results of identification technique, Quoin found something unusual. Ravenclaw's crown, legendary object, Ravenclaw's lifelong masterpiece. This intricate silver crown can give the wearer a +2 enhancement bonus on the intelligence attribute, and increase the wearer's spell casting level by +2. There seems to be some unknown power hidden in this crown. Unknown power? What is it? Upon seeing this, Levin began to use his spiritual power to investigate carefully. Then he could feel that this so-called unknown power was a piece of thought and memory. If one's own mind power were not sensitive enough, most likely one would not be able to detect it. Levin carefully touched the memory with the power of his mind. In an instant, a large amount of knowledge and insights poured into his mind. Levin could feel that the knowledge was about Rowena Ravenclaw's research on emotions, imagination, and soul. However, the specific content is not how to control the mind and soul, but the power contained in emotions and imagination. The effect of magic is determined through imagination, and emotions can increase the power of spells. This is the characteristic of magic in this world. To use apparition, the wizard needs to imagine his destination and make the determination, emotion, to go to that destination. Using the unforgivable 767 curse requires visceral malice. The transformation spell requires imagining the effect of transformation. Normal spells can also enhance their power through emotions. The greatest love can even create a guardianship that lasts for more than 10 years. The ancient magic mastered by a transfer student in Hogwarts Legacy is driven purely by emotion and imagination. This power is exactly the same as the magic used by wizard preschoolers inadvertently. The specific effect depends on the user's thoughts, but the disadvantage is that it is extremely difficult to control, has no restrictions, and cannot perform precise operations. This is why, in the end, the transfer students have to face an energy ball containing evil thoughts. That is the emotion itself that contains malicious intent. Based on the knowledge of the crown's feedback, Rowena Ravenclaw's last research before her death was about the power of emotions and imagination. Imagination comes from thinking, which means the framework and shaping of magic. The magic is the filler, which is filled in the frame to form the magic. Emotions seem to work the same way as magic. In the process, she discovered that the power of emotions exists not only in wizards, but also in ghosts. In other words, the existence of ghosts itself comes from obsession. That is, some kind of paranoid and persistent emotion. Therefore, Rowena Ravenclaw came up with a surprising conjecture. If the everlasting ghost is essentially emotion and soul, does that mean that by actively collecting the power of emotions and integrating them with the soul, one can gain eternal life? Most people, Biv, would desire eternal life. Rowena Ravenclaw became obsessed with this research. She even used fragments of her soul and the power of her emotions to create a new spirit body to test her theory. But soon she discovered that there was a problem, that is, the newly born spirit body cannot actively generate new emotions. Human emotions can change with time and environmental changes, but the emotions of a ghost can only come from the obsession before becoming a ghost, and it will not become more or less. What is the difference between such an existence and the dead? Rowena then began to look for ways to actively generate emotional power. She believed that emotions originated from the physical body, so she tried to create a physical body for the spirit body. She succeeded and failed. The body she created did accommodate the spirit body, allowing her to exist in the form of a living person. But the new body still cannot produce additional emotions. In other words, she just raised a living ghost. From then on, there were very few research results on Rowena Ravenclaw, and her experiments basically ended in failure. The whole study is completely stuck here. Her last research result was the soul storage device. She planned to save her soul and research results separately for future generations in case she could not complete the experiment before her death. If someone could obtain this memory and produce results based on her research, then she would have the opportunity to rely on this power to be resurrected. It seems that no matter which world it is in, after the mage reaches a certain level of power, he will consider ways to live forever. After reading the memory, Levin couldn't help but sigh. Kel'Thuzad in World of Warcraft defected to the Lich King, D&D's mages studied immortality, Demon Soul Pot, and became liches, and even Voldemort studied Horcruxes, all of which are efforts in this direction. You wear the Ravenclaw crown, the inheritance from Ravenclaw enters your mind, your understanding of wizards increases, your wizard level +2, you obtain the inherited knowledge of Ravenclaw, and understand the research of emotions and souls. You have obtained the method of creating ghosts. You find that the method of creating ghosts is very similar to the method of creating a certain high-level existence in your memory. You have understood the heroic spirit creation ritual. 1 Heroic spirit creation ritual. Create a heroic spirit through a ritual. There are 3 elements that constitute a heroic spirit: the huge soul magic power as the spiritual base, the heroic spirit's soul as the core, and the heroic spirit's legend as the framework. When the 3 are combined into one, a heroic spirit can be created. Come on, it turns out that Rowena Ravenclaw's strategy is really feasible. Levin was shocked when he felt the ritual in his mind. Think about it too, heroic spirits are beings transformed into heroes whose great deeds are left as legends after death and have become objects of belief. In other words, heroic spirits and ghosts are both spirits. Heroic spirits have power, free and independent thoughts, and can generate emotions. But ghosts can't. Isn't this kind of spiritual body that has free and independent thoughts and can produce emotions what Ravenclaw dreams of? Rowena Ravenclaw's spirit immortality route, the heroic spirit is a complete success story. But how can heroic spirits achieve true immortality that is different from ghosts? The difference stems from the structural difference between heroic spirits and ghosts. That is, heroic spirits rely on legends and beliefs, while ghosts rely on obsession. Now that Levin has mastered the heroic spirit creation ritual, does it mean Ravenclaw's long-cherished wish can be fulfilled? Of course, the premise is to find the soul of Ravenclaw. He already has an idea about this. Soon, Levin left the room of requirement with the crown and continued his normal daily study and rest. It's as if the previous series of wonderful discoveries didn't exist. Until midnight. Levin woke up from the bed, and after making sure that all his roommates were asleep, he tiptoed into the common room. There was no one in the lounge at this time. Levin wasted no time in taking out the crown and tried to put it on the head of Ravenclaw's bust. When he put the crown on, Levin was surprised to find that the shape of the crown perfectly matched the texture of the statue's hair. Sure enough, the secret is hidden here. The moment he put down his crown, a change occurred. The crown seemed to have been rust-free and electroplated, and its true appearance was restored with a brush. It was a delicate and complex golden crown. The pattern on the forehead was that of an eagle flying high. The wings were made of countless crystal-clear diamonds. The eagle's belly was inlaid with a huge dark blue gem. The upper corners reflect dazzling light, and the bottom edge of the crown is engraved with Ravenclaw's famous motto, "Extraordinary wisdom is the wealth of mankind." The properties of the entire crown have also changed. Ravenclaw's crown, a legendary object, Ravenclaw's lifelong masterpiece, this intricate silver crown has revealed its true power, the wearer's intelligence and perception. Charms gain a +6 enhancement bonus, a +3 caster level, and allow the wearer to see through all illusions as if true seeing. At the same time, Levin noticed that there were 2 more same sapphires under the center of the crown, one was round and the other was shaped like a water drop. At the same time, the magical aura Levin had felt in the statue disappeared. Those auras seemed to be concentrated in these 2 gems. When Levin touched the orb, he was finally able to confirm, the drop-shaped gemstone is like an energy storage device, containing an emotional power, calm, loving, curious, melancholy, joyful. It seems that all the thoughts of a person are mixed together and put into it. Helena mentioned that the loving feeling she felt in the statue seemed to stem from this. And that round gem is a magic item similar to the soul stone. What is preserved in it is Ravenclaw's own soul. Chapter 114. Just when Levin touched the soul stone, a somewhat cold voice sounded not far away. "Hello, Levin Green." Levin followed the sound and looked. I saw a translucent and very graceful figure sitting on the sofa in the lounge not far away. She had a very stunning face. She was tall and plump, with black hair draped behind her like a waterfall, and her facial features were particularly delicate. But the most eye-catching thing is not her breathtaking eyes. The look in his eyes that explores everything shines like the sharpest sword, and is so beautiful that it's a little intimidating. Levin recognized Rowena Ravenclaw at a glance, because she is very similar to the bust next to her, but compared to the statue, she shows no signs of aging in her spiritual state, and her temperament is much more majestic. "Finally, a greedy raven got my relic," Rowena Ravenclaw murmured in a poetic and ethereal voice. "Thousands of years have passed since I fell silent." Levin understood the meaning of her words. The literal translation of Ravenclaw, is Raven's Claw, and the hidden meaning of the name is greedy predator. "I'm sorry, my predecessors didn't live up to expectations. And decades ago, your crown suffered the fate of being made into a Horcrux, so your awakening has been delayed until today." Levin said and bowed to Rowena Ravenclaw as a sign of respect. Whether it's because he's a strong man, the founder of the academy, or he's a charming member of the opposite S**X, Levin has a crush on Ravenclaw. Being able to discover the secrets in the crown, I think you have the right to call me Dean, or Rowena, if you prefer. Rowena Ravenclaw did not continue, but specifically corrected his name for herself. Of course, Rowena. Levin immediately hit the snake with a stick. Then he discovered that when he called him by his name, the spirit in front of him actually showed a smile. It seems that the Dean's spirit body looks majestic and indifferent, but actually longs for closeness and friendship. Combined with the memories of Rowena's experiment gained from the crown, recalling Rowena's performance in his memory, Levin suddenly realized that this seemingly aloof Dean was actually just an academic geek. This kind of person looks indifferent, aloof, and alienated. He has a rich spiritual world and can endure and even enjoy loneliness. But in fact, they also long for a home invasion-like relationship. This analysis is certainly supported by evidence. The most typical evidence is the friendship between Rowena Ravenclaw and Helga Hufflepuff. If Rowena is a typical academic nerd who is afraid of society, then Hufflepuff is a typical social cow little son. She is passionate about everyone, and Rowena is no exception, and Rowena will be attracted by this kind of behavior without any reason. Attracted by reasonable kindness. Combined with the memory of Hufflepuff's occasional appearance, Levin can even imagine the scene where Hufflepuff took Ravenclaw, a late-night girl addicted to experiments, out of the tower and asked her to sleep obediently without any explanation. He probably understood how to deal with the spirit body in front of him. The truth is, I can't stay like this for long, Levin. Rowena didn't know Levin's inner thoughts and said to herself, you should be very clear that ghost is not my ideal form of existence, so I will enter the ghost form as little as possible. As the heir to the crown, I hope you can continue to improve my research and find out the ideal state of existence of the spirit body so that the spirit body can truly live in the world. While saying this, Rowena looked at him carefully, staring at Levin's face motionlessly. Of course, Rowena, since I accepted your crown, this is my responsibility. Levin nodded in agreement, his words full of confidence. Because he already has this method. In fact, after confirming the true existence of Rowena Ravenclaw's soul, Levin considered the possibility of transforming her into a heroic spirit. The three elements of a heroic spirit: soul, legend, and spiritual foundation. In terms of soul, Rowena's soul is generally intact and has been preserved to this day. In terms of legend, as one of the 4 giants of Hogwarts, Rowena Ravenclaw is known to everyone in the wizarding world. In this regard, the 4 giants who established Hogwarts took advantage of it. As long as Hogwarts continues to export graduates, their reputation will continue to exist. The only person more famous than her in the magical world is Merlin. But Merlin's status among wizards is almost equivalent to Jesus' status among muggles. He is completely unique. With such a legend, no one is more suitable to be made into a heroic spirit than her. The only thing that needs to be considered is the spiritual foundation. After receiving Levin's affirmative promise, Rowena nodded with satisfaction. May my experience and the power of my crown be of help to you. In addition, please help me take care of Helena. This is also the responsibility you have to bear when inheriting the crown. Then, work hard, Junior. I won't be able to accompany you for the time being. With that said, she was about to release her ghost state and return to the Soul Stone. Wait, Rowena. Levin stopped her. A year ago, I promised Helena that I would find the secret in this statue for her. Why don't you meet her before you leave? Now is not the time. But we will meet again, right? I believe you. Rowena looked at Levin, leaving a smile. Her figure gradually faded, and finally disappeared. The next moment, a ghost that was 70% similar to her suddenly passed through the wall and appeared in the lounge. It's Helena Ravenclaw. Levin Green, it's you. After saying hello to the boy, the female ghost said eagerly, did you notice anything unusual when you were here just now? Then she spotted the crown in Levin's hand. Oh my gosh, you found it, you found the crown. Thank God. She looked very excited, and this is the crown in its complete form. You have fully activated its power. I haven't seen it like this in a long time. The female ghost was in a particularly agitated state, and it took her a while to gradually calm down. Seeing Levin's confused expression, she explained the reason carefully. It turns out that in Helena's memory, Ravenclaw's crown exists in 2 states, activated and inactive. When the crown is worn on Ravenclaw herself and her true descendants, its powerful power will be fully demonstrated. A euro, please give me flowers. A euro, but when it is held in the hands of an outsider, it can only increase a small amount of intelligence and mana. When I stole the crown from my mother, I discovered that the crown did not show its true form in my hands. Because of this, I was very sad and thought it was a sign that my mother didn't care about me, so I fled all the way to Albania. You know what happens next? Mentioning this matter again, Helena still had tears in her eyes. Levin, thank you for helping me get my crown back and make up for the big mistake I made. For the crown to appear in your hands like this means that you are the true heir of your mother. I misunderstood you at the beginning, and I'm sorry. It's okay, Helena, I don't care about that anymore. Although he couldn't touch her, Levin still stepped forward and patted her shoulder twice to express comfort. Well, thank you for your forgiveness. Helena wiped away her tears and then asked, just now, I suddenly felt that a familiar and kind force appeared in the lounge. A euro, that's what the crown does, right? Zero. Faced with Helena's question, Levin hesitated for a moment before telling the truth. He told the other party that Ravenclaw's soul was still alive in her resurrection plan. So, Mother is still alive and has a chance to return to this world. Helena didn't care at all why her mother didn't see her for the last time, and all her attention was focused on her possible resurrection. You are right, Helena. Ms. Rowena does have this plan, and the success rate of the plan is not low. As long as she continues to experiment step by step, it is very possible to find a way to immortalize the spirit form, at least in my judgment. That's it. Levin replied. Well, I trust your judgment. After hearing this, Helena looked happy. She hesitated for a moment, and then suddenly bowed solemnly to Levin. You are the genius of this generation and her heir. In my heart, no one is more likely to realize her long-cherished wish than you. So, I'm asking you to help her, okay? After saying that, without waiting for Levin to reply, she added, although I'm just a ghost and don't have much ability, if you are willing to help her, I can swear that I will always work for you or your descendants. Although ghosts do not have complete emotions, as long as there are no accidents, their existence time is forever. For the ghost, such an oath is indeed very solemn. The deep love between mother and daughter is evident. For the mother and daughter, one was gifting the artifact and the other wanted to be loyal. With this in mind, Levin had no reason to refuse. If you think about it carefully, if you really create a heroic spirit, there will indeed be many benefits. For example, by using the identity of Ravenclaw to appear everywhere, it is not a problem to fool a lot of people. For another example, she can serve as her assistant or even the tower spirit of the magic tower. After all, heroic spirits have stronger computing power and can do many things that humans cannot do. In short, whether you are an assistant, a stickman, or a thug, heroic spirits are a good choice. So, Levin nodded towards Helena, okay, I promise you. After that, he looked towards the place where Rowena disappeared. You're right, we will indeed meet again. Chapter 115. After receiving Levin's promise, Helena left happily. Levin was left lying on the bed alone, lost in thought. Indeed, for him who has mastered the heroic spirit creation ritual, it is indeed not difficult to create a heroic spirit. And Rowena. Ravenclaw is also the most suitable being in this world to be made into a heroic spirit. But now, there is still an unsolved problem before him. That is, where does the spirit base come from? First of all, magic won't work. No matter where Levin wants to squeeze out the magic power at the level of a heroic spirit, after all, what he wanted to create was a heroic spirit, not a servant. Therefore, what he needs is not just huge magic power, but a powerful force derived from worship and belief. In the Xingyi world where the heroic spirit system is developed, this power is naturally collected by the heroic spirit constellation. But in the world of Harry Potter, there is no such convenient thing as the heroic soul seat, nor is there a 317 Alea who works tirelessly to collect the souls of heroes. So where should I find the spiritual base? For several days, he struggled with this problem. This directly caused him to be absent-minded all day long, even when playing against Hufflepuff on the Quidditch field. Of course, this does not prevent him from bleeding his opponent. But this nonchalant attitude allowed his opponent to break his defense. Especially when Levin was wandering around while guarding Cho Chang, blocking the way from Hufflepuff's captain and seeker, Cedric Diggory, preventing him from getting close to Cho Chang until the girl caught the golden snitch. I know that our level is far inferior to yours, but you can't treat us with any attitude. After the game, Cedric Diggory stopped Levin in front of the locker room and shouted to him. As he spoke, he glanced in the direction of the Ravenclaw women's locker room. Quidditch is indeed about respecting the strong, but that doesn't mean that you can do whatever you want with strength. You should at least respect us who are competing with you. If you want to think about academic issues, why don't you go to the library woolen cloth? Finally, he made a serious judgment on Levin. People like you, no matter how many points they score, will never gain the sincere admiration of fans. After saying that, he turned around and was about to walk away. Who would have thought that he would be caught by Quan? Since the match has just been completed, Levin's bull power buff has not disappeared yet. So Cedric felt the pain in his wrist being scratched. He turned around and heard Levin ask, Cedric, say your last sentence again. At this time, the dispute between the two people had already attracted onlookers. Even though there were only Quidditch players from both sides in the locker room, a lot of people still gathered. Since the two sides are currently only arguing verbally, with neither swearing nor physical action, everyone is still just watching the fun. At the door of the women's locker room, Marietta was secretly saying to Zhang Qiu, have you ever thought that Cedric Diggory looks a bit handsome and dares to speak to Levin like that? But Zhang Qiu looked uninterested. Your vision is too strange, how could you like such a person? What's wrong with Diggory? Marietta was a little annoyed. Hufflepuff isn't more handsome than him, right? You can't ask everyone to compare with Levin. What's more, are there not enough girls around Levin? You've been hanging out with him every day lately, and you haven't seen him look at you twice. Speaking of this, Zhang Qiu was also a little discouraged. But then, she strengthened her belief, after all, no matter what, he is handsome. From the time Levin entered school, she began to pay attention to this boy of the same race. At that time, I just thought he was cute, but as time went by, in her eyes, Levin grew older and more handsome, which made her blush and heartbeat more and more. How could you let such a handsome little boy go? So, people like Cedric Diggory are called masculine. Marietta was still raving about Diggory. Zhang Qiu immediately retorted, no matter how manly he is, it will not prevent him from breaking through Levin's defense on the court. I have personally experienced it. No matter how Diggory broke through, or even used physical collisions, he was firmly blocked by Levin. Levin even had psychological problems, and his threat was not taken seriously at all. Inside. You haven't been protected like this by Levin. I think this is called manhood and this is called security. It's probably because the women's locker room is a bit close. Probably two girls accidentally forgot to lower their voices. Anyway, the sound of their argument accidentally reached Levin's ears. He looked ahead and saw Diggory's ugly expression. and he probably heard it too. Now it's embarrassing, being told by a girl in front of her that she is not as good as another man, and this girl is still. In short, Cedric Diggory's pride immediately exploded. Faced with Levin's request, he retorted vindicatively, I won't say anything. If you have the guts, do it now. Regardless of the difference in combat power between the two. When Levin heard this, he was not angry at all. For him now, it doesn't matter if he is not angry in the life in front of him. What matters is whether he can solve the questions in his mind. So he repeated the question, Cedric, say the last thing you just said again. Cedric still wanted to refute, but looking at Levin's indifferent eyes and the arrogance hidden deep in them, he seemed to be hit hard by some force in his heart, and he suddenly woke up. Thinking again of Levin's record of killing the Chimera himself, he doesn't think that he is much better than the Chimera beast. As a result, the provocative words that had just reached his lips turned into a weak statement in a low tone, I just said, I won't say anything. If you have the guts, do it now. It's not this sentence, it's the previous sentence. Levin's tone was still cold, but he was quite satisfied inside. A simple mental shock can achieve the effect of changing the other party's attitude without even realizing it. Sure enough, Diggory obeyed and repeated, the next sentence is, a person like you, no matter how many points he scores, will never gain the sincere admiration of fans. Levin heard what he wanted, nodded, and said no more. At this time, Diggory wanted to leave here so much. Zhang Chu's 4.6 eyes, looking at him from the side, would have only made him feel happy and excited in the past. But now it's like a magic hot ray, making him feel like his whole body is on fire, and he wishes he could disappear right now. But Levin was in front, and he didn't dare to walk, so he could only stay there. Then he heard words that made his blood pressure rise even more. Is this what you call manly? Zhang Chu bumped into Marietta, feeling a little proud, now you know who is more manly. Being ridiculed by the girl he liked, Cedric Diggory couldn't bear it anymore and boldly said to Levin, can I go now? Unexpectedly, Levin actually raised his eyes and said to him, why are you still here? You. Diggory was angry and resentful, but in the end he did not dare to say anything more and left the locker room dejectedly. And Levin continued to be lost in thought about what he just said. Chapter 116. Emotions, adoration. These two words danced over and over in Levin's mind. Adoration, emotion. Yes, isn't the so-called adoration also a kind of love? Gods gain the faith of humans, and monsters gain the fear of humans. Isn't this the use of the power of emotions? It's just that gods will convert faith into divine power, monsters will convert fear into demonic power, and magic directly uses the power of emotions, and the shadow realm of World of Warcraft directly squeezes this power from the soul. The power of emotions, the power of faith, fear, and anima, the essence of these powers are actually the same. In this case, why don't I just go to a place where faith gathers, like a church, or a place where extreme emotions break out, like a casino, to gather strength? No. That's not right, it shouldn't be that simple. Looking at many worlds, no gods or powerful beings would be so arrogant. The god of war will collect thoughts on the battlefield, the god of Dionysus will gather strength in the carnival, and the gods will only absorb the beliefs provided by believers who chant his god's name. This means that absorbing those outside the scope of his ability, the power of emotions, is harmful. But the anima in the shadow realm is common, and the power of faith gained by the gods can also be transferred. Devils and devils use this power as currency transactions. This shows that different emotional powers can be transformed into pure and universal emotional powers through clergy, talents, and other methods. In other words, if you want to obtain a large amount of emotional power, you can either only obtain specified types of energy through faith, clergy, talents, etc., or you can only look for general emotional power. So, all I'm going to do now is start a cult of Ravenclaw worshippers. Thinking of this, Wen couldn't help but feel helpless. Are you kidding? I won't do it. This is too low. But if you don't want to be a cult, you can only seek the second way. That is to find ready-made ones, but how can there be ready-made, abundant, and pure emotional power for him in this world? Instead of expecting this, it would be better to expect a godhead to fall from the sky and let it soar in the daytime. Wrong. It really does. Suddenly, Levin thought of something. This world really contains a lot of relatively pure emotional power somewhere. And this place is very close to Hogwarts, so you don't need to run too long to find it. In fact, that place is underneath Hogwarts. That's right, what Levin was thinking of was the huge ancient magical energy left underground in Hogwarts and Legacy of Hogwarts. In fact, the core of the entire Hogwarts Legacy story is related to this power. The protagonist of Hogwarts Legacy is a 5th grade transfer student, who is the last descendant of ancient magic. Due to the darkening of the previous generation's successor, ancient magic was almost lost until the arrival of the transfer student. As Levin analyzed, ancient magic was mostly primitive spells that directly manipulated the power of emotions. And emotions are divided into positive and negative. The previous generation's descendant, Isidora Morgana, used ancient magic wantonly. After discovering the power contained in emotions, she not only used her own power, but even tried to extract the power of others for her own use. But it is very dangerous to extract other people's emotions without authorization, even if her original purpose is to get others out of the turmoil of negative emotions. The result will naturally be a catastrophe. After she turned black, she was killed by her mentors. And the power of a large amount of negative emotions she collected was sealed. The entire Hogwarts Legacy is the struggle between the transfer student and a goblin named Lanlock. Lanlock's ancestors participated in creating the secret vault that sealed the power of negative emotions. According to the tradition of fairies, the maker of an item is naturally the owner of the item. Therefore, the items entrusted by wizards to goblins are essentially handed over to wizards for temporary safekeeping. Even if wizards provide rewards and raw materials. After the wizard dies, the goblin has the right to take back his creations. According to this tradition, the evil fairy Landlock tried to obtain the secret vault, lift the seal, obtain the forbidden power, and then launch revenge on the wizard on behalf of the sister fairy. In the final battle, Landlock, who controlled this power of negative emotions, became extremely powerful and turned into a flying dragon made of pure magic power. It breathed terrifyingly non-stop, and even the entire underground cavity was filled with magma. Come out. If the transfer students weren't strong enough, maybe the entire Hogwarts would be gone. It is enough to reflect the power of this force. In the end, Landlock was killed, and this huge force was left underground in Hogwarts. Hogwarts' legacy has two endings. The ending of the good line is that the protagonist seals this power underground in Hogwarts. The evil line is that the protagonist personally absorbs this power and becomes an extremely powerful dark wizard. In this world, we should follow the line of kindness. Otherwise, there will be nothing to do with Dumbledore and Grindelwald. The transfer student can rule the magical world by himself. In this case, the underground cave is indeed worth exploring. Levin, what are you thinking about? We're in the auditorium. Just as he was thinking about this, Zilly's voice suddenly came to his ears. Turning around, he saw the female witcher looking at him with concern. Hermione was also there, and he was already in the auditorium. It was lunchtime, and the little wizards who had just watched a football game were feasting at the long table. He himself was dragged here by Shirai while he was deep in thought. Seeing that Levin was no longer lost in thought, Shirley took the opportunity to say, although Diggory's accusation is a bit excessive, what he said makes sense. You can't do this all the time. It's too dangerous. Sorry, Siri, but I do have important things to think about. Levin said apologetically. Of course, he would not be as blunt as he was with Cedric Diggory when facing people who cared about him. What on earth are you thinking about during this time? Hermione asked curiously, why don't you think about tea and food? Levin hesitated for a moment and then told them about the cave beneath Hogwarts. Map secret room? Underground cave? Ancient magic. I haven't seen you for a few days, why did you find so many strange things again? You're not going to sneak into the tunnel in the middle of the night again. Hermione admired Levin's troublemaking ability but felt helpless at the same time. In this regard, he was even better than Harry. Harry does like to cause trouble, however, due to his own abilities, he can usually only do small jobs. If he wants to do big jobs, he has to rely on chance and Senior Voldemort to raise his hand. But Levin is different, he really has both the ability and the will to do a great job. Hermione herself was quite confused about this situation. On the one hand, she is a rule-abiding girl and has always wanted to be a good child. In principle, she hates behavior that breaks the rules. But on the other hand, there is an irrepressible adventurous factor hidden in her heart, and she always hopes to accomplish something big. You see, I am willing to abide by the rules and want to do big things. No wonder someone wants to be the Minister of Magic in the future. Once I become the Minister of Magic, I am the one who follows the rules, so I can't just follow the rules and do great things at the same time. Faced with Hermione's confusion, Quoin just said, are you going or not? Of course I want to go. As soon as he finished speaking, Hermione couldn't wait to say, don't you dare leave me this time. Okay, I won't leave you behind. Levin gently stroked her little head to express comfort, and then looked at Cyrilla. I will always be by your side if you need it. Shirley gave Levin a reassuring smile. In that case, at 8 o'clock tonight, I will be waiting for you in Shachin. No, I should be waiting for you at the entrance of the library. Update 5/4, more, 23/53, it's not easy to get a new book on the shelves. I'd like to ask for a wave of custom orders, a wave of flowers, monthly votes, reviews, and rewards. If you have votes, please give them to me, the author. This is really important to me. Chapter 117. At 8 o'clock in the evening, outside the library. Hermione and Cyrilla had been waiting here early. Seeing that Levin didn't come, the two of them started chatting and discussed what ancient magic was like. But when the time was approaching, the boy was nowhere to be seen. Why hasn't he come yet? Hermione was a little anxious, he always arrives a few minutes early. So, that's why you came here early, right? That's very considerate of you, Miss Granger. Zilly's last paragraph sounded strange, and she felt that she had caught the other party's small loophole. To each other, senior sister lay on Lun. Hermione tit for tat. Just when the two were about to argue again, the boy walked out of the library. Hey, you actually went in early. It was obviously you who asked us to arrive at 8 o'clock. Hermione was a little dissatisfied. Don't worry, Miss Granger, the screen text must have its reasons. Cyrilla reminded. Siri is right, Hermione, of course I have my reasons. Levin said, shaking the book in his hand. Hermione could see that on the cover of the book was written true explanation of Jade record. I just used the excuse of borrowing a book to enter the restricted book area. I set the coordinates at the destination in advance, and then I came out to find you. He explained, very few people come to the restricted book area. We cannot enter the restricted book area together, otherwise we will be easily suspected. With the spatial coordinates, we can teleport in. It turns out that I misunderstood. Hermione apologized politely, and then asked, but why don't we come in the middle of the night when no one is around? Good question, Hermione. That's because the restricted book area is so important, so the protection measures must be very strict, especially after closing. At that time, the restricted book area not only had multiple access control, but also various warning spells and ghost patrols. Levin replied, at least that was the case in the previous Hogwarts Legacy. He didn't want to take two people to play Assassin's Creed again in reality. Instead of taking that risk, it is better to claim that Mrs. Pants did not come after get off work. After all, compared to those magics, Mrs. Pants is easier to fool. Mrs. Pants likes you so much. She will definitely be sad if she hears you commenting on her like this. Siri defended Mrs. Pants. These are two different things, Siri. Levin shook his head. Mrs. Pants is still a fan of Lockhart. As the three of them talked, they came to a deserted corner. Levin grabbed the two of them and started teleporting. Teleport rune. Activate. Teleport rune, 5-ring spell system. You can create a magic mark that you can teleport to instantly. In an instant, the three of them appeared in front of an iron gate at the bottom of the forbidden book area. Hermione looked around and found that this was an old library that she had never seen before. The walls are covered with portraits, but they are all immobile. There is an Iron Maiden in the corner and 10 episodes of mermaid mummies are displayed on the table in the center. Behind them is the upward staircase, leading to the forbidden book area they are familiar with. We actually moved to the lower level of the forbidden book area. She tried hard to suppress her desire to be amazed and whispered, I heard that no one can apparate in Hogwarts except the headmaster. How did you do it? No, I can't apparate. Levin shook his head and explained, in fact, most of my space spells are ineffective within the scope of Hogwarts. I can transfer here because of the teleportation rune that can only be teleported at fixed points. That's pretty awesome too. Hermione looked at Levin with admiration in her eyes. This boy had once again accomplished a feat that most people couldn't do. Levin waved his hand and led the two of them forward to the end of the room. There is a thick wooden door here. Pushing open the wooden door, you will see a huge stone storage room. Going down the spiral staircase of the stone storage room, there is a huge circular stone room. The stone chamber was empty except for a magic arched stone door in the center. In Legacy of Hogwarts, the protagonist with ancient magical talents can trigger the stone door to reveal the real door leading to the destination. In the eyes of Levin today, Shimon is just Shimon. Can you enter the map secret room you mentioned by going down here? Hermione looked at the stone door in front of her, eager to try. Alajo cave opens. She directly cast a lock-picking spell. But there was no response because the stone door was not locked. Door is open. Upon seeing this, Hermione cast the open door curse that she had often used before. Or say kicking the door curse. But when the curse was cast on the stone door, not even a speck of dust was stirred up. Obviously, the protective spells on this stone door are very high-end, and these opening spells are useless. Hermione connected with another open sesame. But the door dismantling curse cannot take effect either. Seeing that she couldn't open the door, Hermione cast a series of revealing spells, but to no avail. Helpless, she had no choice but to look at Levin. Levin was already thinking about it just now. The power of ancient magic is very powerful. At least the spellcaster who built this secret room must be stronger than himself today. At my own level, it is obviously impossible to enter by forcibly breaking the curse. But it doesn't matter, Levin is good at more than just ordinary spells. He has learned a lot and has many other means to carry out misplaced competition and dimensionality reduction attacks. For example, although the door in front of him was strong and the protective magic was perfect, Levin found no interfering magic on it. In other words, Levin can completely use the magic power on the stone door to reversely detect the space that the stone door will lead to when it is opened. After all, the founders here would not know that there are still people who can do such a thing. The specific analysis and precise construction of spell effects is one of the biggest differences between arcane magic and the world of Harry Potter. If the magic in the world of Harry Potter is the art of magic, arcane magic, then, is an exact science. Analysis portal. With Levin's level, he quickly detected the coordinates of the space that the stone door would lead to when it was opened. Although teleportation is prohibited near Hogwarts, the coordinates between such teleportation gates are naturally connected. Levin seized this gap, used any door, followed the existing coordinates between the portals, and led the two to their destination. Easily bypassed the portal. There is a good saying in business war, the person who kills you may not be your peers, but cross-border. At the other end of the portal is a dim hall. The decoration of the hall, Manos, is very gorgeous. The floor is a huge and smooth piece of marble. Golden plant patterns cover the floor, stone pillars, and walls, making the whole hall look unique. Externally brilliant. The hall was empty. There was a small stone platform in the center with a stone basin on it, and a magic book floating on the basin. This is a pensieve. Hermione exclaimed, I've seen it in a book, and it says that the pensieve can allow people to see other people's memories. The pensieve is a very rare magic item, and its number is now very small. As far as Levin knows, only the Ministry of Magic and the headmaster's office at Hogwarts have gadgets. The three people stepped forward, and the magic book immediately opened automatically, and a little silver liquid seeped out from the book and fell into the basin. What is that, Mercury? Hermione asked. No, this is a memory left for visitors to watch. Let's see what kind of army the seniors who left behind memories want to tell us. Levin arranged a warning spell nearby, and then the three of them stepped forward and immersed their heads in the pensieve. Chapter 118. The memory is not long, and soon the three of them raised their heads from the pensieve. Hermione's first words were, "Ancient magic is so terrifying." Although I have heard about the strength of ancient magic from Levin, but after seeing it with their own eyes, she and Ciri were still shocked by the powerful power of ancient magic. In fact, not only them, but even Levin himself was slightly shocked. The memory in front of me is different from the one in the game. The memories in the game come from earlier guardians, users of ancient magic. It is they who lead the protagonist of the game on the path of ancient magic after the transfer student arrives. The memory in front of me was left by the guardian of the previous generation, the protagonist of the game, the transfer student himself. It records how he mastered ancient magic step by step, fought against the evil goblin, and finally defeated the goblin, preventing the goblin from using the legacy of ancient magic to poison the whole world's source of law. In his memory, Levin not only truly saw the terrifying power bursting out from the power of evil emotions, but also saw with his own eyes the manifestation of ancient magic in reality. What transforms others into explosive barrels and then detonates them? Why control the enemy remotely and smash them to the ground? Make the enemy smaller, then pull it over and crush it to death. Summon thunder to chop enemies into pieces. The most classic one is the Avada lightning chain, mark every enemy on the field with magic, and then use an Avada death curse to kill everyone. This lethality was so lethal that even Voldemort called it extreme when he came. In this memory, the 617 ending of that battle is naturally recorded. As Levin thought, the transfer student did not absorb the power of negative emotions, but sealed them in the underground cavity. At this time, Hermione frowned slightly and said, "Unfortunately, this memory ends here." The guardian left no further clues in the memory. Levin shook his head. "No, it's not that there are no clues, it's that only people with ancient magic talents can see the corresponding clues." "Even you can't see that clue?" Ciri asked. "That's not true, but being able to see clues and being able to trigger clues are two different things," Levin replied. "Of course he can detect clues of ancient magic, after all, the essence of ancient magic is the original emotional power, and his spiritual power can easily detect this power. But he is a time traveler and is not a native of this world. How can he obtain the inheritance of ancient magic? So, we can't go any further, right?" Zilly frowned. But Levin just smiled. "No, I still have a way. As a wizard, what should you do when you can't find the way? Of course, use prophecy. Different from the vague prophecies of genius and metaphysics in the world of Harry Potter, the prophecy spells in arcane magic have a certain degree of rigor. You can explicitly ask for what you want to know, whether there is hostility, detect hostility, the identity of the enemy, identify the opponent, the motive for fighting, know the motive, or the enemy's weaknesses, know the motive, analyze weaknesses, enemy beliefs, detect heretics, all have related spells that can be used. If he wants to find the inheritance of ancient magic in the map secret room leading to the underground cavity, Levin also has related magic that he can use. However, this spell lasts for a long time, so you can eat something here first and take a rest." After saying that, Levin took out the table, chairs, snacks and black tea from his wallet, and placed a table of midnight snacks in the room. Hermione even saw that there were even a few magic books thoughtfully placed on the tea table. Was it for fear that she would be bored? "So, you always have these things with you, right?" Seeing the tea party arranged in front of her, Zilly couldn't help but complain, "It's really an exquisite life. Since you have become a mage, why not be nice to yourself?" Levin said matter-of-factly. "Magic should make your life easier." Hermione also felt that the scene before her was exaggerated. But her focus was on how a small purse could hold such a large set of tables and chairs. How much space has been extended in this wallet? Levin noticed her look. "If you want one, I can give it to you as a Christmas gift. But now, girls, wait for me for a while and enjoy your late-night snack." As he spoke, he walked aside and started preparing himself. Hermione and Ciri looked at his movements curiously while eating small cakes. Hopefully tonight's exploration will be a bit of a warm-up. Zilly ate a piece of matcha cake in one bite and said slowly, "This way I can eat them all with peace of mind and not worry about gaining weight." After hearing her words, Hermione was stunned. "I put a piece of strawberry macaron in my mouth, not sure whether I should eat it or not." Seeing her look like this, Shirley laughed and said, "It's okay, Granger, feel free to eat, your figure is not enough to worry about it." As he spoke, he deliberately looked her up and down. Hermione wanted to be angry, but she looked at the other person, then at herself, and found that she was unable to refute. Damn it, why is the gap so big? She had no choice but to turn her grief and anger into appetite, hoping that these desserts would make her grow some meat in the right places. The girls were eating and eating there. Levin has turned on the magic. Detect location, 6-ring prophecy system, you can see and hear the designated location, and understand what is happening at that location. The difficulty of the magic's success depends on how familiar you are with the location and what kind of physical connection you have to the place. In fact, before using the pensieve, the possibility of Levin finding the secret room on the map through detecting location was not high. After all, he only learned about the relevant locations in the game and has never been there in person. But through the memory in the pensieve, Levin is almost like going to the map chamber in person. As a result, the success rate of detecting location is greatly increased. As the long ceremony reaches its climax, Levin stared at the magical mirror in front of him, the fog in the mirror began to dissipate, and suddenly, Levin could see the location of the map secret room. It's just below the Hogwarts clock tower area. Having received the result, Levin immediately ended the ceremony. At this time, 1 hour has passed. Come on girls, I think I've found my target. It's finally over. I've waited until the flowers withered. In this case, let's fight it quickly. Staying up late will cause acne. So, the three of them packed up the tables and chairs, took the memory book on the pensieve, and returned to the outside of the library through the teleportation rune. At this time, Hogwarts had already started a curfew, and the three of them used invisibility to jog all the way to the sewer below the clock tower. Didn't you say that the map secret room is here? Looking at the surrounding sewers, Hermione searched carefully. Where's the door to the secret room on the map? The true form appears. Quick appearance. Scapen appears. Detect secret door. Hermione continued to use the appearing charm, and even used the secret door detection charm that Levin taught her, but to no avail. Without a true successor to lead the way, we really can't open the door. Levin shook his head. This was also what he expected. He never thought about entering the map secret room through conventional methods from the beginning. At this time, Zilly also checked the surroundings. No, there are no traces of secret doors or ventilation ducts around here. What should we do? Levin smiled. You have to open your mind. Think about how I broke the stone door before? Why do you always have to follow the question maker's ideas? You have to know that this is not an NEWT exam. Since you follow the question if people's train of thought cannot continue, we can definitely enjoy the table. After hearing this, their eyes lit up and they looked at Levin. I saw Levin waving his magic wand, causing the masonry on the ground to separate, exposing the rock formations and soil. Then he stepped forward, grabbed the two of them, and started casting spells. Thorstone magic. 2 years later, I suddenly realized that a strange power enveloped me. 2 at BB and then, under the leadership of Levin, they sank into the rock and earth, swimming like fish diving through the earth and rock, not even leaving a tunnel behind. I don't know how long I traveled. Finally, this wandering hit a brick wall, and the traces of a brick wall appeared before my eyes. Levin took out his wand again and caused the brick wall to part in front of him, revealing a corridor paved with bricks. Levin pulled them and jumped into the corridor. Hermione and Siri immediately realized that they had seen this tunnel before in the pensieve. In other words, they penetrated directly through the soil and forced their way into the map secret room through the wall. Apart from using Thorstone's skill, what's the difference between this and digging a tomb hole? Chapter 119. Now what Levin digging the hole dug out was the passage leading to the secret room of the map. The other end of this passage leads to the sewers of Hogwarts. That's where Levin and the others came from. Walking back along the passage, Levin discovered that this secret passage had been sealed. It turns out that after the negative power of ancient magic caused a big trap and was sealed under the secret room of the map, the previous generation of guardians was determined to bury the secrets of ancient magic once and for all. In order to avoid being accidentally discovered by the school's little wizard, he simply blocked the secret passage from the castle leading here. Now that I have found this place, there is no need to seal the secret passage. As he spoke, Levin waved his wand and used the levitating spell to clean up the ruins. Siri and Hermione also started working together and quickly cleared away the rubble and rubble. Immediately afterwards, Levin put his hand close to the sealed wall, stone shaping technique. Under the influence of magic, the thick wall made of bricks and stones was reshaped, and a door-shaped outline appeared in front of me. Soon, the outline transformed into a real stone door. Immediately afterwards, he cast secret chamber technique, 6th ring. Secret magic lock, and hardening technique on Shimon. The former can prevent light and noise from behind the door, ensuring privacy. The latter is the upgraded secret lock, which can lock the stone door with magic, ensuring that the stone door can only be opened in a designated way and cannot be pried open unless the door is forcibly broken. The last hardening technique is naturally to prevent the stone gate from being forcibly broken through. After clearing their way out, the three of them walked towards the other end of the corridor. When you open the gorgeous door, you will see the glorious hall in your memory. The main hall is built in a huge rock cave. It is supported by tall stone pillars all around. The railings and handrails on the stone pillars and around them are still decorated with the same plant-style metal outline. Between the stone pillars are 4 tall paintings. The paintings were originally normal portraits, but at this time there was only an empty background and the characters were missing. In the center of the cave is a large smooth ground, which is like a mirror in a calm lake. After the three people entered the main hall, they immediately saw the high platform on the railing in front. There was a square flat plate standing on the high platform, as if waiting for something to be placed on it. Levin placed the memory book he took from the pensieve on this table just like in the game. Then, this hall was awakened. The surface of the lake began to bloom with starlight. Countless bright spots of light spread out under the dark mirror and sank one after another, revealing a miniature model of the surroundings of Hogwarts. When Levin stepped on this ground, it was like stepping on water, with ripples of light appearing. At this time, he was like a giant in the clouds, looking down at the entire Hogwarts. Levin looked around, including the train station, Hogwarts Castle, the Black Lake, the Forbidden Forest, and Hogsmeade Village. He had a panoramic view, which was almost equivalent to a 3D holographic sandbox. No wonder this place is called the Map Secret Room. In fact, the reason why this Hogwarts map exists here is to locate nearby ancient magical energy nodes. As the three of them entered the secret room on the map, the characters in the huge paintings on all sides return one after another. In the pensieve, the three learned their identities. The first is an old man with a goatee and a hexagonal scholar's hat. His name is Percival Rackham, who comes from Hufflepuff and once served as the divination professor at Hogwarts. The first one was a seemingly honest, fat man with a round beret named Charles Rookwood, a professor of transfiguration from Slytherin. The third person is an Indian wearing purple clothes and covering his head, named Sen Baker, a professor of magical zoology from Slytherin. The last one is a red-haired middle-aged woman in red, Neo Fitzgerald. One of the former headmasters of Hogwarts, from Ravenclaw. In fact, there is also a record about them in Hogwarts, a school history, but it obviously does not mention the part about ancient magic. Has a new generation of guardians finally appeared? The portrait of the goatee Rackham just finished speaking and immediately realized something was wrong. You didn't come in through the normal way. The problem is also seen in the portrait of the Indian male baker. You don't have ancient magic in your body, you are not the new generation of inheritors. The expressions of the other two portraits also became ugly. The portrait of Principal Fitzgerald said seriously, I'm sorry, children, this is not a place for your adventure. No matter how you got here, there is nothing you want here, so leave now. Hello, 4 professors. Levin ignored their repulsive attitude and stepped forward to say hello. It is now 1993. It has been 100 years since the previous generation of guardians appeared. We are the students of this class of Hogwarts. The portrait of the fat man Rookwood lamented, has another 100 years passed, you actually know about the guardians. Levin nodded, of course, we not only know about the guardian, but we also know what the guardian has sealed here. In fact, this is why we are here. The faces of the 4 portraits suddenly became serious when they heard this. The power of evil emotions was the source of all chaos 100 years ago, and was the fundamental reason why ancient magic was almost extinct. Euro, please give me flour. Euro, this group of little witches said they were here for this. Do you know what you are talking about? Fitzgerald's portrait looked serious, that power is not something you should be exposed to at your age. Of course I know what that power means. Levin retorted, and I know better that letting this force stay under Hogwarts is not a good thing. Find a good sounding reason before doing something. This is a good habit Levin has developed. Rookwood's portrait sighed, you are right, child, but we have no choice. The portrait of the Indian man doesn't think so, even so, it's not a power that can be touched. We guardians can't do anything about it, let alone you. Hearing this, Hermione was not convinced. Why do you think Levin can't do anything about it? Zero, having seen Levin's omnipotent self-created magic, he had inexplicable confidence in this boy. But obviously, these professors' portraits don't believe this. The portrait of Principal Fitzgerald made the final decision, since you never leave, we have to take some coercive measures. Rackham's portrait comforted, don't be afraid, children, we will not hurt you, we will only erase your relevant memories. Although it is inappropriate to do so, we have no choice but to prevent the secret from being leaked. Choose. As soon as he finished speaking, bursts of blue-white light began to emit from around the hall. Immediately afterwards, one figure after another fell from the sky and landed on the ground, causing waves of tremors. It was a metal demon statue. From the appearance, it looks like a heavily armored warrior, the shortest is 2 meters tall, and the armor on his body has the same style as the main hall. The whole body of the armor seemed to be entangled with vines made of metal, twisting into artistic arcs. Together with the glowing blue core, it looked gorgeous and majestic. I saw these golems either raising their swords or their war hammers, walking towards their masters step by step. This is the defense mechanism of the map chamber. These golems are not only trial objects for the guardians, but also the defensive force of the map's secret room. If an ordinary little wizard saw the tall golems, he would probably faint from fear. But to the surprise of the 4 portraits, the 3 people in front of them were not nervous at all. The leading boy and the oldest girl even took out a silver sword. The boy smiled calmly at them, well done, professors. Just so you can see why we can deal with that power. The picture shows the map of the secret drying room. Chapter 120. Next, the 4 portraits saw a battle scene they had never seen before. Golems usually have various resistances. It is best to use spells with the force field attribute to deal with them. Before the fight, Levin reminded. Clear. Hermione and Cyrilla nodded in agreement. The so-called force field is a purely physical entity effect maintained by magic. It is the manifestation of pure physical force, but it does not have any mass. Therefore, this pure force cannot be resisted through attribute restraint, but can only be resisted by pure physical defense. Spells such as Arcane Missile, Shield, and Magic Explosion are all attributed to force field attributes. For man-made weapons like golems, wizards can add magic resistance, elemental resistance, etc. to the golem during the manufacturing process. But if you want to block force field attacks, you can only rely on the physical structure of the golem. I saw Ciri attaching a force field ball to her arcane sword. This sword was made for her by Levin after he killed the Chimera. Hermione gave up the disarming spell and started brewing arcane missiles. As for Levin, he added a druid spell, Rust Claw, to his sword, specifically targeting these metal golems. As a man with both druid and mage professions, he must of course make full use of the characteristics of both professions. Then, they stood there and stood ready. Seeing that the golems 157 were about to arrive, Levin waved his free hand and used the second spell, Serial Lightning. The arm-thick thunder shot out of Levin's hand and poured directly into the leader's body. Then, using it as an intermediary, it was ejected to another golem closest to it. The arc bounced 5 times in a row, and 6 golems were hit. Under the action of the terrible thunder, the internal structure of the first golem was directly damaged and turned into a pile of parts on the spot. Although the second one could barely hold on, its key parts were already charred black. The third and fourth ones were emitting black smoke. The damage to the last 2 was relatively shallow, but there were also many joint problems. With just one spell, the golem's team was completely disrupted. Levin and Ciri took the opportunity to rush forward, I saw Levin chopped into the waist of a demon statue. As the sword edge touched the golem, the metal on the golem's surface was quickly corroded as if time had accelerated, and finally turned into a rust color. The originally strong armor also became brittle and broke when the Levin sword was swung, cutting it in half. On the other side, Siri rolled violently to avoid the golem's hammer blow, and then hit it in the head with a sword. In an instant, the golem's head seemed to have been hit not by a sword but by a siege ram, turning its shoulders into a discus. Hermione's arcane missile fired continuously, accurately hitting the leg joint of a golem, knocking it to the ground. After just one encounter, these demon statues lost everything. Levin knows very well that showing your strength is more effective than saying all the good things and all the bad things. From the very beginning, he was not prepared to directly convince the 4 old antiques in the portraits. Do you think your ancient magic is awesome? They are guardians from above. Whatever they do is for the benefit of you weaklings, so you have to accept it. Arrogant? Very arrogant, but this is reality. The reality is that ancient magic is powerful, and you modern magicians just can't defeat the guardians. In this case, the trouble that the guardians have to deal with is naturally not something that you group of weaklings can handle. Then when it comes to how to deal with trouble, you weaklings must be obedient. But now, Levin wants to prove, your ancient magics are nothing special, human beings have human heritage, we are not filtering out the residue left behind by the guardians. From outside the world, the universe, we obtain the power to deny the world. In fact, in Levin's eyes, these golems are pretty good. Powerful, resistant, and highly autonomous. If it hadn't been for Levin's gang of bugs who use otherworldly magic, the little wizards at Hogwarts would have been unable to do anything about them. The most important thing is that this thing should be mass-produced and consumable. Otherwise, it would be impossible to win in groups in the Guardian trial. If the technology to make this is obtained, there will be no shortage of cannon fodder for future battles. In less than 3 minutes, the first batch of golems were dismantled by 3 people. The 4 people in the portrait were stunned by the scene. The headmistress became anxious. These are not enough, we have to give them something real. Then the really dangerous guy arrived. Of course, it's still a golem. They only have golems in their hands, but this time it's not a little guy 2 or 3 meters tall. Instead, it was a behemoth that was 5 to 6 meters tall. How much does a 5 to 6 meter tall metal giant weigh? It's at least 30 or 40 tons. Such a big thing fell to the ground, causing the ground to shake. Looking at this big guy, even Zilly felt a headache. Such a big metal golem, even a fire dragon has to be suppressed by one hand. It's not a heavyweight at all, okay? How to deal with such a terrifying existence? Siri and Hermione looked to Levin for help, and boy did they disappoint. You retreat further and attack it with strong acid arrows. As for the front, let me hold it back. The giant golem held a giant sword and moved closer to Levin step by step. The ground shook with every step he took. Hermione and Siri had already retreated to the door, only Levin still stood in front of the golem, brewing magic. Acid mist technique. Unknowingly, thick green fog began to float around the golem. When the mist touches the golem shell or comes into contact with parts and fragments on the ground, it will make a hissing sound. That was the sound of strong acid corroding metal. The giant golem was completely wrapped in acid mist. In this environment, if it were replaced by the ordinary golem before, I'm afraid it won't turn into molten iron all of a sudden. But a giant golem is a giant golem after all. Under the rough skin and thick flesh, corrosion will not penetrate its outer shell for a while. As long as it can knock down Levin before it is completely corroded by light, naturally, the acid mist cannot be maintained. The golem did the same thing, raising its sword high and slapping it in Levin's direction. But Levin is not nervous. Faced with the whistling wind above our heads, he just jumped up and turned into a giant eagle. He flapped his wings and flew out of the swing range of the giant sword. Immediately afterwards, the giant eagle transformed again, growing 4 legs, a snake tail, and its head became like a lion. At this moment, Levin transformed into a chimera form. Is it an animagus? Or an animagus of magical creatures? As a professor of transfiguration, the portrait of the fat man Luke Wood was surprised, and the little wizard in front of him gave him another surprise. The Indian male Professor Baker frowned. What kind of animal's animagus is this? It actually has the characteristics of a lion, an eagle, a badger, and a snake. Could it be a chimera? 11 As expected of a professor of magical zoology, he could see through the origin of transformation at a glance. But this did not prevent him from admiring Levin. It is actually possible to create a new species of chimera. Although it is only in the animagus state, it is also amazing. You know, the real animagus manufacturing method was lost as early as the ancient Greek period. Otherwise, this world wouldn't be just one kind of animagus. The portrait of Rackham with the goatee noticed another thing. The 4 elements of this synthetic beast just correspond to the 4 major houses of Hogwarts. Does this mean that he has the corresponding qualities? Considering their battle just now and the large-scale acid mist technique in front of them, for a time, the portraits looked at Levin and others with complicated eyes. But at this time, Levin didn't care what the portraits thought. He was focused on how to deal with this big guy. Relying on the advantage of being able to fly, he didn't intend to fight with it. Instead, it flew around the demon statue in the air, diving at every turn, and breathed thunder at its joints. The power of thunder and lightning poured into the body of the giant golem, although it cannot be demolished, but it also caused great internal damage. The golem's joints were emitting steam and smoke, and its movements were stumbling. And no matter how it swings its weapon, with its clumsy movements, it couldn't hit the chimera flying around. Even if you get lucky once in a while, with its strong recovery power, chimera will be intact in a short time. Finally, in the 10th minute of the fight between the two sides, the golem could no longer hold on. Its key parts have long been destroyed by the constant lightning breath, the outer shell has also been corroded by acid mist technique and strong acid arrow, and the damage has begun to corrode the interior. It was barely enough to just keep standing. Levin saw the opportunity, dived down from the cave's dome, and slammed into the golem's head. This blow was like the straw that broke the camel's back, and like the last piece of a building block that was removed. As the chimera hit the golem's head, the entire golem collapsed. Levin lifted the acid mist spell, landed in the center of the hall, and returned to his human form. Cyrilla and Hermione immediately came to his side. Levin looked at the portrait in front of him and said proudly, "Now, professors, do you think we have the qualifications to deal with underground troubles?" The portraits of the four professors, "You look at me, I look at you," the male Indian Professor Baker 0.2 first said, "Although you are not familiar with ancient magic, you impressed me with your knowledge of magical animals, and I agree that you have this qualification." The fat man Lukewood continued, "With your animagus, its potential is no less than that of ancient magic itself. I recognize your strength." Goatee Professor Rackham also said, "Lions, eagles, badgers, and snakes, courage, wisdom, kindness and perseverance. You have indeed shown the beautiful qualities of the four colleges, and I allow it." 17 Seeing that her three colleagues had compromised, Fitzgerald, the last female principal, could only nod her head. "I admit that the power you possess is no less than ancient magic, so I am willing to believe that your purpose is not to get involved in this power. But I have my doubts that you can solve this problem." "But, you are right. No matter what, you have proven that you are qualified to deal with this problem. In this case, I can only let you move forward." Levin did not expect that he, a highly charismatic person, also had the blessing of charming humans, but he finally gained the recognition of these disciples through his animagus transformation. But it didn't matter, because the road leading to the underground hollow was about to appear in front of them. I saw that the smooth ground that was originally like water seemed to have turned into real water. The water level continued to drop like a drained swimming pool, eventually revealing a secret door at the bottom of the water. Chapter 121. Since they wisely opened the way, Levin doesn't mind showing them goodwill. "Thank you professors for trusting us. Please rest assured that we will never use this power indiscriminately." After that, he took the lead and led the two of them into the door. After still a long passage, the three finally saw the legendary underground cave. It is a giant natural cave. The internal roads are very rugged, but the paths are very spacious. This is probably because the goblins used the old Beijing method to get in by digging tunnels, and the main roads were widened by the goblins. This is probably the only good thing they did. Although this place is called an underground cave, there are many cracks leading to the ground above. Although I don't know where the other side of the crack is, but Levin could see the moonlight shining through the cracks into the cave. Compared with during the day, you can also enjoy the nourishment of sunlight. Plus the groundwater flowing through there is no shortage of moss, ferns, and even flowers and trees in the crypt. The three of them walked around here for a long time. I saw a lot of decayed skeletons on the road. Most of them were much smaller than humans, but there were a few that were far larger than humans. On the other hand, there are not many human skeletons. That was the original goblin army, and the giant monsters they tamed to fight monsters. I wandered around for about 10 minutes. In front of their final gate, two 5-meter giant golems stood in front of the door. Seeing the arrival of the three men, the golem suddenly regained its vitality and walked towards them holding a 4-meter-long giant sword. If anyone among them has the power of a guardian, he can naturally control them to give way. But Levin and the others came in, so naturally they had to face these two big troubles. However, the previous Levin could be dealt with in his chimera form, so these two were no problem. Levin in his chimera form used lightning breath and acid breath alternately against them. It took about 20 minutes to grind them to death. When the two giant steel golems fell, the giant swords in their hands burst out with the power of ancient magic, activating the gate's runes. Walking into the door is the treasure house of sealed power. It is said to be a treasure house, but in fact it is just a huge bear cave. The original stone bridge and the metal decorations hanging on the top of the grotto were all completely destroyed in the battle. Today's grotto has a minimalist appearance. The floors and walls of the grotto are painted with complex magical patterns. And suspended in the center of the grotto is a complex sphere made of intricate fairy metal. Inside the sphere is a large ball of white light energy. But if you look closely, you will find that under the cover of white light, black and red waves will appear from time to time. The three of them could feel the terrifying energy surging and restless from a distance. Levin feels that this is almost the same as the black mud in the Holy Grail, all the evil in this world. This is the power of negative emotions collected by the sinner Isidora Morgana. Levin is right about one thing, putting this power here is always a time bomb. Because except for the guardians who master ancient magic, no one else can control this power zone at all. And even as a guardian, the only choice is to seal it. Isidora Morgana's masters, the four guardians in the portrait outside, could not destroy this power, so they chose to seal it. The previous generation of Guardian Transfer students could only gather the power of negative emotions together after defeating the Fairy Landlock. At his level, he still cannot destroy this power, so he can only continue to seal it. But what now? There are no Guardians now. If this thing causes a riot, who can handle it? If you think about it, the magic of emotions is not only the power of wizards, but also directly related to magical creatures. It is already a consensus in the magical biology community that magic can breed magical creatures. For example, small magical creatures such as boggets, ghouls, and potato spirits are often born because of the remaining magic power of wizards lives. The extreme form of this phenomenon is the prankster. They usually appear in schools and other places where young wizards gather, such as magic schools. After sensing the little wizard's depression, desire to have fun, and desire to make a scene, the mischievous elf will be born. Like Peeves at Hogwarts. And the huge power of negative emotions in front of us is gathered and compressed. If there is any leakage, some kind of powerful dark creature will probably emerge. That's it, it's still a relatively non-dangerous situation. If the seal is damaged more seriously, all negative emotions will be forced out. What will happen to Hogwarts in the next second? Transform into a magical version of Fukushima? Magic version of Chernobyl? Will all wizards near Hogwarts be contaminated by black mud? It's even very possible that the magic here bursts out instantly. Even without Levin, Hogwarts can be directly promoted to the floating city. But how could Hogwarts bypass Levin Green and become a floating city? So he must control this power. How about it, Levin? Levin, can you use this power? Looking at the huge seal in front of her, Hermione broke into a cold sweat. Just being close to her made her feel a strong sense of oppression and malice. It was hard for her to imagine what kind of person could absorb this power. I think we'd better leave it here. How can that be done? How can we let this kind of thing stay under the ground of Hogwarts? Levin said righteously. The two girls were stunned when they heard this. Zilly Dacky, are you serious? In her mind, Levin is not that kind of person. She still understands Levin very well. In essence, Levin is still a selfish person. He will only help others when his own interests and safety are guaranteed. When did I act fake? Levin glanced at him. The aggrieved look in her eyes that said you misunderstood me made Zilly couldn't help but feel guilty. It's puzzling that he is actually a good man who serves the public good. Is he really wrong about him? Hermione, on the other hand, was both happy and worried. Levin, what are you going to do? There's no need to do this if it's too dangerous. We can tell Dumbledore. Levin walked towards the seal, shaking his head as he walked. Don't count on Dumbledore, he is not omnipotent. Only I can solve this problem. With that said, Levin walked under the seal. Here, he felt the sealed power at the closest distance. The monstrous malice, just a small amount of leakage, is enough to drive ordinary people into madness. That is to say, Levin can resist the influence of this force by relying on his strong mental power and spiritual barrier. If you want to turn negative emotions into positive emotions, and turn malice into good intentions, ordinary magic cannot do it. Arcane mages are not good at dealing with this kind of problem. But it doesn't matter, I still have the power of nature. Let Mother Nature purify this evil force. So, he stood under the seal, opened his hands, closed his eyes, and began to guide the nearby natural energy. Command Plant. Vitality Revival. Advanced Resistance Improvement. Healing Soul. 4 rings. Natural Barrier. 4 rings. Natural Purification. 4 rings. Plant Growth. Druid spells were cast one after another. Levin's energy is getting more and more exhausted, but the natural power around him is getting stronger and stronger. Finally, the two women behind saw, the top of the cave suddenly cracked, but this was not a sign of collapse. Because the thick roots pass through the rock formations, continue to grow downward, and surround the top of the seal. At the same time, under Levin's feet and around him, flowers and green grass grew crazily. Several more oak trees broke out of the ground and quickly grew into towering trees, surrounding the bottom of the seal. The vines even snaked upwards to wrap around the entire seal. The tree roots above and the oak trees below eventually grew and entangled together under Levin's control, becoming a huge temple surrounding the seal. Levin then cast daylight technique one after another, permanently fixing it around the temple, instead of sunlight illuminating the plants here. In this way, an underground natural temple was born. Finally, Levin placed the Scholar Moonstone in the center of the temple, on an 097 altar naturally formed by branches under the seal. This Druid heritage treasure has thousands of years of history and is full of symbolism. It will serve as a sacred object in the temple, suppressing the seal. The moment Levin put down the Scholar Moonstone, even the portrait in the secret room on the map can feel that a great and sacred power is coming. This is not some divine power, rather, it is the manifestation of natural will itself. Because in essence, a Druid is also a kind of priest, and Druid magic is a kind of divine magic, but the source is not from gods, but from nature itself. Therefore, in addition to various spells, Druids are also proficient in powerful rituals that mobilize the forces of nature. Creating such a ceremonial place is also a piece of cake. In some cases, nature itself can amount to a real deity, for example, in this temple. Within the seal, negative and evil emotions were immediately suppressed, the hopeful power in the temple began to slowly purify it. According to Levin's estimation, within 2 or 3 years at most, these negative emotions will be completely purified and transformed into pure emotional power. By that time, it can be used to create the spiritual base of heroic spirits. That's Levin's plan. If it had turned out to be evil, he wouldn't have dared to use it as a spiritual base. This stuff is simply magical and poisonous. If this is really used as a spirit base, the resulting heroic spirit will probably be an altered Ravenclaw that has been soaked in all the evil in this world. If you really accept it regardless of the situation, not even the gods can bear it. From this perspective, Levin's previous bragging about the portraits was not pretentious. Even if he has his own motives for using the power of the seal, he can really purify this power through the natural temple and eliminate its hidden dangers. Therefore, he can be proud to say that having him here is indeed a blessing for Hogwarts. Update 5/4. Additional update 2556. It's not easy to get a new book on the shelves. I'd like to ask for a wave of custom orders, a wave of flowers, monthly votes, reviews, and rewards. If you have votes, please give them to me, the author. This is really important to me. Chapter 122. Levin's feat of creating a natural temple to purify negative emotions was not only unanimously welcomed by the two female companions, but also praised by the four portraits. Divination Professor Rackham had previously hinted that the reason why Levin Animagus is a synthetic beast composed of representative creatures from the four major academies is because he has the beautiful qualities of the four major academies. If he said this before, it was out of encouragement and hint to Levin, so now in the portraits of the four professors, Wei Wen has really become a symbol of the beautiful qualities of the four major colleges. Simply put, Levin's courage to face their challenges is enough to prove that he has the courage, and boldness of a Gryffindor. His series of self-created spells and witty responses in battle reflect Ravenclaw's erudition, wisdom, shrewdness, and intelligence, his ability to not be limited by the advice of professors, insist on his own opinions, and lead his companions along the way shows that he has the ambition, shrewdness, cunning, and leadership of Slytherin. In the end, he was able to ignore the danger of the seal and take the risk to build the temple in order to eliminate the huge threat to Hogwarts. It can be seen that he has the diligence, kindness, loyalty, honesty, and fairness of Hufflepuff. In short, a bunch of rainbow farts made Levin feel embarrassed. He even began to think about whether he really did this out of the greatness of his heart, rather than looking for a spiritual foundation to create a heroic spirit that can serve oneself. Of course, it's no wonder that the four portraits praise Levin so much. It was really too much trouble that Levin solved for them. It can be said that this huge evil magic is the reason why the Guardian inheritance has been cut off for a long time, and it is also the source of a series of tragedies over the past hundreds of years. And the four of them had their own sins in the process of creating this trouble. They personally cultivated Morgana, but failed to guide her well in her growth, which ultimately led to tragedy. They must be found guilty of negligence. Now, Levin has solved all their worries. It is no exaggeration to say that Levin is a great benefactor to the Guardians. Since Levin is a great benefactor, the conditions imposed by the great benefactor must be implemented unconditionally. As a result, the four of them not only agreed to teach Levin all the techniques for making ancient magic golems, but he also promised that before the next Guardian is born, this map secret room and the cave under the secret room will be completely open to Levin for his use. In other words, Levin's secret base at Hogwarts +1. Now, he only has 2 years left to wait before getting a heroic spirit of his own. After this exciting journey of ancient magic, the Three People's campus life returned to peace. Class as usual, get out of class as usual, add points to the college as usual, go to the restricted book area to borrow books as usual, twice a week, Quidditch training as usual. On weekends, we went to the Forbidden Forest for a night tour as usual, to see the unicorn Laurie and the centaur druid Daisy. In the blink of an eye, late autumn has arrived, and a strange cold wave suddenly hits from East Greenland. A chill began to spread throughout Hogwarts. Due to the cold wave, a cold suddenly broke out among the students and professors, leaving Madame Pomfrey in a hurry. Not only Professor Snape, but also Levin was roped in as a strongman to help brew the potion. According to Snape, the little wizards can drink it. But if you have to find one of them that is okay, then Levin Green's potion is probably worthy of muggles and squibs. Levin, you are quite a nice person. In order to fight the cold, they need to brew a refreshing potion. This potion has an immediate effect, but people who drink it will have smoke coming out of their ears for several hours. Lockhart, whose reputation had declined, stood up again and tried to teach Madame Pomfrey some recipes to treat colds, such as disinfectant. He even claimed, "No one knows colds better than me." Then, he himself caught a cold, so Snape rewarded him with a bottle of concentrated version of the refreshing potion, which made Lockhart's head work as a train for 2 or 3 days. This is also the first time Levin has seen the old bat so pleasantly. Under the influence of the cold wave, the weather in Scotland has also become particularly bad. Hogwarts seems to have suddenly entered the rainy season. Raindrops as big as bullets pattered on the windows of the castle and did not stop for several days. The water in the Black Lake rose, causing a muddy flow in the flower beds. The pumpkins planted by Hagrid swelled to the size of a flower shed. He planted these to hang in the auditorium on Halloween. Soon, Halloween arrived. When the sweet pumpkin smell fills the entire castle, it means Halloween is coming. The students in the school are happily preparing to participate in the Halloween party. The auditorium was decorated with live bats as usual at this time. The huge pumpkins planted by Hagrid were carved into lanterns, and there was also a small castle that could accommodate a person sitting in it. The most interesting or terrifying thing is that there is a spider web hanging on the top of the auditorium's porch, with a giant black spider lying on it, twitching its hairy legs from time to time. Steve secretly told Levin that Dumbledore had booked a skeleton dance troupe to entertain everyone at the dinner. Levin was speechless when he heard this. A bunch of skeletons were dancing. What's so good about ribs? Dumbledore just likes fancy things. But soon, he had an idea and came up with a brilliant idea. Among the 8 schools of arcane magic he mastered, most of the school's spells were used by him in learning and combat. Only necromancy spells he didn't use often. It's a waste that the expertise of necromancy school's specialization provides so many necromancy spells. Because most of the spells of this school deal with death and the undead, it is easy to ruin your reputation if you apply them rashly. While discussing the skeleton dance company, the two walked into the auditorium and happened to meet the Gryffindor trio, chatting with ghosts. "Hey, Harry, don't forget to see you in the underground classroom at 7 o'clock in the evening." The ghost of Gryffindor, nearly headless Nick ordered. When Nick walked away, Harry began to sigh. "I had completely forgotten about the death anniversary party. Some time ago, Harry was punished by the gatekeeper Filch for accidentally bringing muddy water into the castle. Fortunately, with Nick's help, he escaped. As a price, he was invited to attend Nick's death anniversary party. Actually, Nick also invited me to attend the death anniversary party of Mrs. Togger, Helena, and he also told me that there would be a performance by the Headless Horseman Hunters, Levin said, holding back a smile, but I refused. It seems that Harry and Ronald are the only fools who were fooled by Nick. Can I not go? Just say I have a stomachache. Ronald regretted hearing what Levin said. Harry nodded in agreement. Is it that the food made by the house elves is no longer good, or is it that Dumbledore's jokes are no longer cool? The most important thing is that he can see Zhongqiu in the auditorium from time to time, which is the happiest thing. Since you promised, you must keep your promise. Hermione reminded. That's easy for you to say. You don't have to go anyway. Harry muttered dissatisfied. I didn't say yes then. Hermione said, taking Levin's arm, right. She didn't want to give up the steaming feast at the wonderful Halloween party and choose to go to the cold basement with two useless men to spend the night with a group of ghosts. Just thinking about this scene gave her a headache. Seeing his friend abandoning him and preparing to walk into the golden auditorium with Levin, Harry, and Ronald were even more uncomfortable. Before leaving, Levin threw them 2 pieces of black bread. This is €1. Harry took the rough bread with a puzzled look on his face. The elves at Hogwarts are good at cooking, and the food quality at Hogwarts far exceeds that of the entire Great Yin. Being used to the delicacies of Hogwarts, Harry said that he would not even eat black bread dogs. Take it first, Harry. You'll need it later. Levin said in a gloating tone. These 2 little fools didn't know that the ghosts' banquet could not contain living food. In fact, ghosts like to enjoy food with strong taste because of their lack of taste. Stinky tofu and durian are both children's favorites. What they like most is burnt or moldy food because it has a strong smell. By the way, when the time comes, help me see if there is the famous Louis XVI in the Headless Horseman Hunters. Chapter 123. Not to mention the tragic encounter that Harry and Ronald are about to face, in the auditorium, the Halloween banquet began soon. The entire auditorium was decorated with lights and candlelight. There were gold plates on the table, which showed a golden halo under the candlelight and looked very attractive. Just when the little wizards were salivating, misty singing suddenly sounded in the auditorium, suppressing all the noise. Suddenly, the hall became quiet. Everyone looked around, looking for the source of the singing. As a burst of smoke filled the air, a row of skeletons in gorgeous clothes emerged from under the floor. They twist their skeletons exaggeratedly to the music. Many timid little witches were frightened and screamed by the sudden appearance of the skeleton, but they soon realized that this was a group of performers from afar. Dumbledore's promise to invite the skeleton dance troupe came true. Suddenly another high platform rose up among the skeletons, and several skeletons dressed as Japanese women were on the high platform. That song comes from her, however, during the singing process, the empty-looking jaw opened and closed, which looked very funny. The weird skeleton singing, combined with the mechanical skeleton dance, creates a weird, eerie, and joyful atmosphere. But obviously, the little wizards are not interested in this relatively boring dance. Just when they were drowsy, the singing on the stage suddenly changed 180 degrees, the ethereal and dull music suddenly became lively and rhythmic. The singer's lyrics have also changed from antique-like old songs to novel ones. It's _close_to _midnight. Something _evils _lurking _in _the dark. At the same time, the dancing postures of the accompanying skeletons became more dynamic. Although it still has the inherent mechanicalness and stiffness of the skeleton, there is a beating rhythm in the machinery, making people unable to help but dance along with it. The little wizards immediately became excited and looked at the stage in surprise. Many senior Muggle wizards said that they seemed to have heard this song before. Only Dumbledore, who was sitting at the teacher's table, frowned. I remember that this is not the music I ordered. By the way, what is the name of this song? It sounds pretty good. Then he saw Levin on the long table of Ravenclaw waving his wand towards the skeleton dance group like a conductor. Although he didn't know how he did it, Dumbledore felt relieved immediately. At least it was the students in the college who caused the accident, not some guy with ulterior motives. On the long table, Levin continued to wave his wand, directing this performance. Through the dead corpse controlling of the necromancy school, as well as magic mouth technique and phantom sound technique, he successfully controls the skeleton dance troupe to perform his own performance. The skeletons move in unison, dancing mechanically to the beat of the music. Stand on tiptoes, twist hips, turn around, step, twist neck, turn around, look back. The magical dance moves make many little wizards imitate them. The skeleton singer also sang the lyrics loudly. Cause this is thriller night. And no once gonna save you. From the beast about to strike. The dynamic lyrics have already made many wizards sing along. What was originally a dull performance has turned into a disco scene. Finally, these exciting 10 minutes passed, until the music ended. The little wizards were still tapping the golden plate with their knives and forks, whistling, and clapping their hands. The skeleton dance troupe saluted around them and then went back underground. There was thunderous applause in the auditorium. Ravenclaw received a lot of applause from Levin, and many of them had discovered that Levin secretly changed the performance. What wonderful music! Thank you to the Skeleton Dance Company and thank you to Mr. Green for the performance. Professor Dumbledore appeared in the middle of the stage. He pointed at the non-existent tears in the corners of his eyes and said with emotion. The applause was even louder, and the little wizards were surprised to find that this academic master was not only a versatile person, but also a very cool guy. Levin accepted everyone's praise with a smile. He felt that relying on this skill, he would definitely dominate the entertainment industry in the magical world after graduation. Then let's celebrate and let go of eating. With the joy after the performance, the Halloween dinner officially began. Everyone ate to their heart's content. While Levin was enjoying dessert, he couldn't help but think of the two unlucky little guys who attended the death anniversary party. Nowadays, they must be facing a table of rotting kitchen waste and have to chew raw black bread to satisfy their hunger. Come, they may have to face an even more unlucky fate. After the dinner, Levin followed the bustling crowd out of the auditorium and stepped onto the stairs. Suddenly, the lively and chirping sounds disappeared, and the students in front stopped and saw a terrible scene. Between the two windows, on the wall a foot high from the ground, there were some writings daubed on it, glimmering under the light of the burning torch. The secret room has been opened. Those who are enemies of the heir should be alert. Under the sign, Mrs. Norris, the administrator Filch's beloved cat, hung her tail from the torch bracket, her body as stiff as a board, and her eyes wide open and staring. In the corridor, there is a pool of water. Harry and Ronald stood alone at the end of the wall, looking panicked. But that kind of appearance gives people the feeling that everyone has gained something. Not may a euro, Harry hurriedly wanted to explain. Before he could finish speaking, Malfoy squeezed his way out of the crowd. His cold eyes became vivid, and his usually bloodless face turned red. He looked at the typed words, and then glanced at the little wizards around him. Then he saw Hermione, the muggle girl who had embarrassed him so much. Those who are enemies of the heir, be careful. You will be next, Mew. Malfoy suddenly found himself speechless, and then he realized that everyone around him suddenly became huge. No, he should have shrunk. Then he looked at his hand, which was a brown-green hand with mucus, and there was poof between the fingers. He was actually turned into a toad. Then he saw Levin standing out from the crowd, walking up to him and grabbing him from the ground. Malfoy's two followers tried to rush forward, but Levin did not turn around or even use his wand. A pool of thick oil suddenly appeared at the feet of the two followers, and they fell down on the spot, just like they did last time on the court. Sure enough, you haven't learned your lesson. Looking at the trembling toad in front of him, Levin sneered, don't be afraid, I won't kill you. I'm just curious, who gave you the courage to speak like this in front of me for the second time, hey? Malfoy opened his mouth and tried to explain, but all he could hear was a croak. Even so, the boy heard what the other party wanted to say. He just shook his head, you're good for nothing, Dad can't control me, even if he is a school director. I hope this is the last time I hear the word mudblood from your mouth, otherwise. Levin said, using his wand to make a gesture on the toad's belly. Just prepare to be a toad for the rest of your life. As he said that, he tossed it casually. Malfoy, who was transformed by Maleficent transfiguration, returned to his human form. He immediately screamed in panic, PD himself, picked up two followers and ran away. At this moment, there were bursts of footsteps behind him. It's the professors who are coming. Chapter 124. What happened? What happened? Without even a moment of mourning for Malfoy's tragedy, the one who immediately came to the battlefield was Administrator Filch. He shouldered his way through the crowd. Then he saw Mrs. Norris, and he stumbled back a few steps, grabbing his face with his hands in horror. My cat! My cat! What's wrong with Mrs. Norris? He screamed. Then his bulging eyes caught Harry's eye. You, he screamed, you. You killed my cat. You killed it. I'm going to kill you. I'm going to. Levin looked at the desperate administrator and reminded with some pity, Mr. Filch, Mrs. Norris is not dead, she is just petrified. Filch trembled, really? You swear? No, no, Mrs. Norris, it has. At this time, the students pushed aside one after another, and Dumbledore and Professor McGonagall came too. Headmaster Dumbledore. Look at Mrs. Norris. Filch's entire hope was placed on the White Wizard. Dumbledore glanced at the students around him, then glanced at the writing on the wall, then approached the stiff Mrs. Norris and looked at it carefully. Behind him, Filch was at a loss as to what to say. Principal, Mr. Green said it's not dead. What Mr. Green said is true, right? Dumbledore nodded, it's still alive. With that said, he rescued the petrified cat. Come with me, Filch, he said softly, oh, and Mr. Green, Mr. Potter and Mr. Weasley, I need your help with something. The others go back to rest first. Lockhart stepped forward eagerly. My office is closest to here, the principal, it's right here, you can, thank you, Gilderoy. The silent crowd parted to let them pass. Lockhart was very excited and hurriedly followed Dumbledore, looking very proud. The moment Dumbledore said yes, he had already figured out how to orchestrate himself into a dominant position in his hands. Professor McGonagall and Snape followed. Hermione didn't leave, she followed closely behind Levin. Arriving at Lockhart's office, Dumbledore put Filch on the desk and, while inspecting it carefully, asked the little wizards about the situation. Behind him, several young wizards made eye contact where they couldn't see. Harry opened his mouth and silently told Levin and Hermione, I have nothing to do with this. But he soon didn't dare to do this, because he found Snape standing behind them, half hidden in the shadows, staring straight at him. That malicious look made him very uncomfortable. Harry remembered Levin saying that Professor Snape's hairline was a bit dangerous. He was willing to give his hair to Snape and let him make a beautiful wig, just asking him to let him go. Of those present, the most active one was naturally Lockhart. He circled around Dumbledore, making suggestions and talking non-stop. It must have been killed by a spell. I guess it was the transformation torture curse. I have seen others use this spell many times. It's a pity that I was not there at the time. I happen to know the method of undoing the spell, which could have saved the life it's. Dumbledore said nothing and continued to Lady Liz. I remember something very similar happened in Ouagadougou, Lockhart continued. A series of attacks are recorded in detail in my autobiography. At that time, I provided various amulets to the people, and the problem was solved immediately. However, his words were interrupted by Dumbledore. Mrs. Norris is petrified. He concluded. Ah, I think so too, Lockhart immediately agreed, as if the person who spoke 3 minutes ago was one of his cousins. No one knows the petrification spell better than me. Levin and others covered their mouths from behind and almost laughed out loud. Harry laughed the most. He was tricked by Lockhart in defense against the dark arts class. But then he suddenly discovered that having such a professor can be quite enjoyable sometimes. But immediately, Harry knew he was wrong, because the firepower was transferred to him again. It must have been Harry. Filch accused, you saw what he wrote on the wall. Harry, what did you do to Filch? After Lockhart was slapped in the face by the speed of light, he also noticed that the students were laughing at him and immediately cooperated to deflect the conflict. I didn't touch it at all. Harry shouted. When I arrived at the scene, it was already on the ground. Please allow me to interrupt, Headmaster. Snape said suddenly. Of course. Dumbledore nodded. Maybe, Potter just wasn't supposed to be in that place at that time. Harry couldn't believe that Snape would actually speak for him. But immediately, he realized that he had thought too much. But we did encounter a series of doubts. Why on earth did he go up to the corridor? Why didn't he attend the Halloween party? I went to Nick's death anniversary party, there were hundreds of ghosts there, and they could prove I was there. Harry was busy trying to prove it, but Wu Chen didn't have a ghost present at the scene. Suddenly, he looked at Levin. By the way, we were with Levin and Hermione before we attended the death anniversary party, and they could prove it. Levin nodded. Yes, I watched them attend the death anniversary party with my own eyes. But after this, why don't you come to the party? Snape said, his dark eyes sparkling in the candlelight. Why the upper corridor? Because. Harry lied, I'm tired and want to go to bed. No dinner. Snape chased him. I think the food provided by ghosts at the party is probably not suitable for living people. €, please give me flour. €, because of you we were full. We had a piece of brown bread. Ronald said loudly, and he took out a thumb-sized crumb of bread from his pocket. The brown bread that has been stored for a long time is as hard as a brick. Stop eating the delicacies at the banquet and insist on eating black bread. Snape's sneer deepened. Because I like brown bread, Ronald said without hesitation, black bread is the best. As he spoke, as if to prove this point, he threw the piece of hard black bread into his mouth and started chewing it. Levin could hear the sound of raw bricks being chewed. In the end, it was Dumbledore who had the final word. Harry is innocent until proven guilty, Severus. Then he looked at the aggrieved Filch. It requires the most profound black magic to cause petrification, and it is impossible for second-year students to do this. Behind him, Levin shook his head secretly. In fact, he can do just that. Having mastered the transformation school specialization, after reaching LV11 wizard, he quickly mastered the 2 6-ring spells petrification and removing petrification. This is not a temporary stiffness caused by all petrification. It is similar to the petrified demonic eye of Medusa, and the full body-bound petrified seed that was hijacked by ancient demons. The kind that cannot be changed back until no one breaks the curse. But that doesn't stop him from being a second grader. Of course, even if he could remove petrification, he didn't intend to be exposed just like that. The hand I showed at the Halloween dinner just now is enough to gain exposure for a period of time. Of course he needs this kind of hot-button event to maintain his reputation among the little wizards. But he doesn't need to show up twice in a short period of time. Mrs. Norris is not worthy of his rash action. Unless the threat of petrochemicals continues to rage and the school cannot come up with a response in a short period of time, at that time, panic had accumulated to a certain level, and this was a good time to take action. As for now, teasing Dumbledore should be done in moderation. Dumbledore continued to comfort Filch. Mrs. Sprout planted some mandrakes this term. Once they grow up, I have a potion that can bring Lady Norris back to life. I'll make it, Lockhart interjected. I must have made it 100 times. I can make the Dara resurrection potion while I'm dreaming. No one can do the Jamandra resurrection potion better than me. I understand, you all understand. Why don't you go to the United States to compete with a man named Trump who understands Buddhism in the West? Levin groaned inwardly. Sure enough, the slap in the face came. You don't need to do that, Snape interrupted, I'm the potions teacher. That's a shame, Lockhart couldn't help but shook his head. Snape, you will regret it. But finally everything came to a preliminary conclusion, and the 4 Levins were able to leave and return to the dormitory to die. Chapter 125. Hermione was very bold when she took the initiative to join the investigation team. But on the way back to the break room from the office, he kept his hand tightly around Levin's arm. It seems that he is afraid of being suddenly attacked by someone. That gesture made Harry and Ronald look sideways frequently. It seemed that Filch's incident still scared her. Levin felt the other person's fear, so he did not stop her from this intimate behavior. The real unlucky ones, on the other hand, know nothing about future troubles. Thinking of this, Levin couldn't help but look at Harry, and the boy who lived was stunned. He was surprised. Why was Levin looking at him with pity again? No, why should I say it again? In fact, while in Lockhart's office, Levin felt that Dumbledore could actually guess the source of the attack. At least he could guess that this matter must be related to Harry Potter. It turned out that 813 was because of no other reason. Harry's level of lying was too low. I was too sleepy, so I just went back to bed. I knew it was nonsense as soon as I heard it, especially Ronald, who is greedy. How could he give up the Halloween party for brown bread? If he believes this, he might as well believe that Levin is Qin Shi Huang. In fact, the reason why Harry did not return to the auditorium to participate in the banquet was because during the process of returning to the auditorium, his parcel tongue heard a whisper that no one else could hear. At Dumbledore's level, even if he couldn't determine what happened, he should be able to see the problem. If he really cared about the safety of his students, he should have questioned Harry further. As long as this information can be asked, the source of the attack can basically be determined, and the subsequent troubles in the original work will not happen again. However, he insisted on taking this opportunity to train the boy who lived. Levin was surprised by this. As headmaster, shouldn't Dumbledore's first concern be the safety of his students? Even putting aside the safety of the students, what do you call that? Isn't Dumbledore afraid that Harry will be broken by the whetstone? From Levin's perspective, it was normal for Harry's knife to be broken by an accident. Not everyone is as big, thick, and hard as Levin. In this weird atmosphere, the four of them arrived at the door of Gryffindor's lounge. When leaving, Hermione lowered her head, her knuckles on her hands turned white, and tightly grasped Levin's clothes, not letting him go. What's wrong? Levin asked softly. Hermione was shaking all over, suppressing her tears and whispered, I've been feeling uneasy tonight. I don't understand. Levin, do those pure-blood families hate us muggle-born wizards so much? Levin sighed slightly. No wonder Hermione was so weird along the way. It turned out that the impact of what happened tonight on her was not as calm as it seemed. Being cursed by powerful black magic in Hogwarts, even if it is a cat, is still scary. Pure-blood wizards, like muggles, are a large group. There are good and bad individuals among them, so we cannot generalize them. Levin comforted him warmly. There are some muggles who think they are noble and would rather risk the world's disapproval to slaughter everyone else as animals, right? So, you want to tell me not to be biased against others because of temporary feelings, right? Hermione's eyes flickered and she looked at Levin. The boy shook his head. No, what I want to tell you is that in this world, the most important thing is your own strength. If you are weak, others will bully you for various reasons and names, such as you are a muggle, or you are a heretic. But when you are really strong, others will not dare to do anything to you, and can only secretly slander you. They will accuse you of discrimination, they will complain about your domineering, but I can't do anything to you. Authis a euro. Hermione was shocked by the boy's somewhat destructive words. She subconsciously wanted to retort, a euro, but wouldn't this be too overbearing? Levin shook his head. If it were me, I would rather be called overbearing than be unable to call the other person overbearing after being bullied. What's more, if you think this kind of thing is overbearing and the world is unfair, then you should make yourself stronger. Because only the strong can make the rules. If you are strong enough, you can naturally make it illegal to discriminate against muggles. You can follow your wishes and the world will become fair and just. You are lying. That's what Hermione originally wanted to say. Levin's words subverted her outlook on life. But her experience with Levin told her that what he said was right. For example, Malfoy dared to call her a mood-blood, but no one in Slytherin dared to say that to Levin. And after today, Malfoy will probably not dare to talk to him like this again. This is all deterrence based on Levin's strength. I understand. Finally, the little witch nodded vigorously. I will work hard to make myself stronger. Then come on, Levin touched her curly hair, but don't worry too much, because before you become stronger, I will still be by your side. After watching Hermione return to the Gryffindor lounge, Levin left immediately. But he did not return directly to the Ravenclaw Tower. Instead, under the cover of invisibility, he went to the abandoned girls' bathroom on the 3rd floor. This is where the secret room opens in the original work. At this time, Ghost Myrtle was not in the bathroom. Levin quietly came to the sink. After a brief search, Levin found the faucet with a small snake carved on the side. According to the original work, just use parcel tongue to say open to it to open the passage to the secret room. Levin tried, turn on. Then he realized that he was using human language. The parsnip didn't trigger. He figured it out after a little thought. Levin's animal talk is not parcel tongue after all. As a spell, animal talk has fixed trigger conditions. He must talk to the corresponding animal. Dead objects cannot trigger animal talk. Seeing that there was no result, Levin returned to the dormitory obediently. It seems that it is better not to think about the 0.8 convenience of directly entering the secret room to solve the trouble once and for all. In this case, let's leave this troublesome matter to Dumbledore's savior. As for him, as for the basilisk, just take care of it if you encounter it. If you haven't encountered it, just pretend it doesn't exist. Anyway, for Levin today, this is not a big trouble. If someone around him is petrified, he also has the ability to break the curse, so he doesn't need the Mandric resurrection agent at all. Even if they were unlucky enough to be stared to death by a basilisk, they could be revived directly with the rejuvenating elixir, made from the Philosopher's Stone. The only thing I need to worry about is that I have to rush to the scene as soon as possible after they die. Prevent their bodies from being discovered by others before they are resurrected. Otherwise, in order to avoid the rejuvenation elixir being exposed, he would have to use it liberally and forget it. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and subscribe to the channel so you are notified of future uploads. You can find the next parts in the playlist visible on the screen or on my channel. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.